All right, well, good evening, everyone. And what a great night to be in Sugar Camp, Wisconsin, right? Yeah. And welcome all family and friends of Mr. Alvin Sawinski. Tonight we have a special graduation ceremony and honorary diploma that we'll be presenting here in our first meeting of the business section of the meeting. And but we're going to all start by standing up and saying Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we got a few things to get through before we start into our ceremony. So if we could start off with the administrator's report on agenda posting and notification of the meeting to the media.
Sure. The agendas were posted at Three Lakes School, Sugar Camp School, Town of Sugar Camp, the Town of Three Lakes, and the Town of Monaco. And the media notified included the Vilas County News, the Northwoods River News, WRJO News, WXPR Radio, and WACD, WATK Radio.
All right, thank you for that. Next, we go to amendments and approval of agenda. Any amendments?
No amendments.
Okay. All right, I'll seek a motion for approval on agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Was that you, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so motion by Terry, second by Michelle. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None heard. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have approving minutes of the May 11th, 2022 special meeting, the May 18th, 2022 regular meeting, and the June 1st, 2022 special meeting. So we have 3 meetings that we've got minutes that were submitted to us in advance. I can take a motion to approve all 3, or if you want to approve each one, I can do that as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 11th, May 18th, and June 1st meetings.
Second.
All right, so motion by Josh, second by Stacy. Any other questions, comments, edits, changes? All right, hearing none. I'll call to a vote. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None heard. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have approving vouchers, check register for the period of May 13th, 2022 through June 9th, 2022.
I'll make the motion to approve checks dated May 13th, 2022 through June 9th, 2022 for accounts payable checks number 2122-00228 through 2122-00255. Regular checks number 126481 through 126623, and manual checks number 5307 through 5321 in the amount of $750,575.25, and ACH payroll checks number 9000-37802 through 9000-38052, and regular payroll checks number 59215 through 59239 in the amount of $526,489.15 for a total amount of $1,277,064.40.
Second.
Okay, so motion by Josh, and was that Michelle?
Stacy.
Stacy, okay, thanks. All right, all those in favor signify by stating aye.
Wait. I got, my paper doesn't read the way Josh read it.
I corrected it after I printed yours.
Oh,
The 750,000 is correct.
750 is correct.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none heard. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we go on to public comments. We can hear comments from visitors regarding agenda items. Would anybody wish to speak to an agenda item tonight? Everyone here is just going to sit and listen, huh? All right, okay. Moving on, administrators' reports. Terry?
The administrator's report will actually be within the new business items of this evening. So I don't have anything separate to report on at this time.
Very good. Next on to new business. Start off with the Honorator Diploma and graduation ceremony for Alvin Sawinski. Big moment.
Okay.
Want to start us off?
I'm going to start us off, but I'm just going to say, because my life has been about weather and crises lately, it seems like, that should we have a storm, we would go to the bathrooms here on the right-hand side or the bathrooms on the left-hand side, or Mr. Jack Wales will escort the back of the room to a classroom to the backside. We really do have plans for when things happen, so let's hope we get through tonight without any exciting weather. But yes, I'm going to start this evening off. So, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. This is such a wonderful way to start a board meeting, and this is our first try at this, so you're going to have to give us a little bit of leeway. Just for a little bit of background, it was brought to our attention that we've given honorary diplomas, but they've generally been based for a military purpose. And in reviewing school district policies, there's not a lot of districts that do have a policy on the books that recognize when you have a person who exemplifies what a graduate should be. The military is covered, but there are reasons for military, besides military, including hardship or reasons they would have left. And so when we looked at the policy and the board decided to review it, we did some research and we found that we wanted to add that to what we do here. And we do have some fantastic citizens and residents over the years who came to our mind. And we put this out then in January. This policy was approved, and we had one candidate this year that was brought forward for consideration. I just want to also share with you that when this idea started, it was wonderful, but it was kind of like, where do you go from here? And we're here, and that's the main part. So I want to start off by saying congratulations to Mr. Alvin Sawinski. I'm so honored to be part of this presentation and celebration. 1955. That is the year you would have attended your commencement exercises. So I told you, I did the math. That's 67 years. Good school district. I've learned how to add and subtract. You know it. We come from good stock. It's definitely your moment in time. Most of us look forward to graduation when a new moment is in time. Kids are looking forward to where the world might take them, what they're preparing to do, and what they're going to be able to do as a young adult. And we have the privilege of, instead of looking forward, we can take this moment and look backwards. And today is a milestone. It's truly a day of recognition. Mr. Sawinski's resume is impressive. I will let his family talk about some of his accomplishments, but let's just say that his list of credentials is overwhelming and certainly inspiring. We live in a wonderful community, a small, tight-knit community where the values and character, the hard work and the dedication and commitment truly mean a lot to us in Sugar Camp and in Three Lakes. Over the years, I've been told many times by my mother about the way it was when Sugar Camp families were growing up and attending school. And my mom is sitting right there. She tends to tell me the same stories many times, so I know this one well. And she told me that when she was in school, that Mr. Henry Sawinski decided that it was time, his boys had come of age, and they were needed to do work on the farm. Now, it's probably a better story than that, but that's the story that I know, okay? And when they went home, when especially boys back at that time went home, they took care of the family business. The business was Sugar Camp farming. And I gotta say, Mom would always end up with the comment, well, I guess he had enough to make success out of life because look what he's done. And I think she was right, and we can all attest to that. When we looked at that criteria for the honorary diploma, it should be noted that this is a recognition that is not easy to earn. In fact, it's really challenging. When you're in high school, you're looking forward and you kind of have an idea of what steps you're taking and where you're going to end up. In this case, you're looking back at what somebody has accomplished, and the list is long. The Three Lakes School District states that an honorary degree recipient exemplifies what it is to be a Three Lakes Blue Jay graduate and has demonstrated through life accomplishments as a member of the community. Through this knowledge and success as a businessman, as a service member to our state and country, a leader in the community, an ever-giving volunteer, an active member of St. Kunigunda and his faith community, and a supporter of our kids in the school district and not only our surrounding school districts and in Missouri as well. This is our man, our neighbor that we know as Al Sawinski. He is a father, a husband, a grandfather, and a gentleman, and he has set the bar high. It is my honor to call you a friend, a neighbor, and now a fellow alum. So congratulations, Mr. Al Sawinski. Graduation, I would like our principal, Mr. Justin Zeus, to step forward and say a few words about our graduate.
Thank you, Ms. Maney. Usually when I get up and talk about graduates, I get to speak about 4 years worth of work. It's a little bit taller order to speak about 70+ years of work, right? Alvin, the first thing I want to convey to you is, and words don't do it justice, but I gotta convey to you a thank you, and loads of gratitude. And the reason why I want to thank you, sir, is, and I'm speaking on behalf of my kids and the kids in this community for generations now. The place where they grew up playing ball was better because of you over here at the facility, right? The place where they went to school, here and over there in Three Lakes, was better because of you. The place we go to church is better because of you. You make this place, this community that we live in, a better spot to be. And so thank you for that. Thank you. The other thing I want to talk about is, in the last 4 decades, the profession that you chose, Alvin, is a tough one. In the last 4 decades, almost 50,000 farms have been lost in the state of Wisconsin. Your farm has expanded and expanded and expanded. It spans counties and states across this country. And people are always searching for the magic recipe of what success, what brings success, right? Everybody's got the magic bullet for what success. You figured that out long ago. It's one word: work. I wonder how many of those yellow pair of Wells Lamont handy gloves you wore out. And I'd hate to even guess, right? But it's a lot. And that probably is the thing that we all can learn most from in the example you set for us, is that there is no magic way to have success in this life except for work. And when that's done, more work. This community respects you for that. All generations to follow you can take a lesson in the amount of work that you put in the course of your lifetime to this point. And it's amazing, the body of work you put in. So I hope that the students that we gave diplomas to a few weeks back, I hope they were watching. I hope they were, and I hope they learned that the best way to success in this life, no matter what your chosen field is work. So thank you for leading the way for us on that, Alvin. Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone, for being here in the weather. Some of you traveled a long distance. We even have a family member here from Chicago, or the Chicago area. So thank you, all of you. And thank you so much, the school board, on behalf of our family, for, first of all, offering this. And secondly, for accepting my dad as your first applicant. We are so hopeful that this will cause more people in this community to apply. I'm not sure anybody really knows about your new policy yet, and in our opinion, it takes strong communities to build strong schools, and strong schools to build strong communities, and it would be terrific if more folks like my dad were recognized. So just briefly, in case you all wondering what he's been up to for the last 67 years, did you say it was? So first of all, he actually started taking courses outside of school before he left school. He started doing rifle work with the National Rifle Association Junior Northern Public Improvement Association Rifle Club, and had one of the best grades in their process, and received basic small arms training and was an accomplished sharpshooter. He then went on to take classes at the Rhinelander Vocational School and Nicolay College classes, including engine repair and electrical stuff that he explained to me and I didn't understand. So he was a National Guard member, and then when he couldn't continue to do the weekends that the National Guard required because of his work at the farm, then he became a reservist, and that period of time totaled almost over a decade. So on the farm had transitioned from logging to dairy and was in the middle of transitioning from dairy to vegetable farming. And so he did all sorts of things, setting up contracts for sales. He drove around the country in a truck that's nothing like the trucks they have now. And also set up water processing and loading systems in the warehouse, and in addition to doing a variety of field work. And then eventually also worked in the office, which he hated, he will tell you, so don't get him started. And did all kinds of the financial planning. He managed the chip plant that they purchased in Rhinelander for a period of time, and did all of that while also becoming a licensed private pilot in 1975, and he had a little tail dragger, Tabria, that he loved, and that was fun for all of us, so that we missed that a lot. He's obviously been a member of St. Cunigunda Church, 25 years as the post sexton, volunteer fire department for 20 years, serving 8 years as chief, and all of the various courses and classes that were involved in that. He's received awards for service from the Lions Club for Rhinelander and Sugar Camp and Eagle River, and is an honorary life member with them. He has done volunteer work for the Sugar Camp Snowmobile Club, including service as a flagman for cross-country snowmobile races in the 1970s, which some of you may recall. He's received the Outstanding Citizen of Sugar Camp Award, and has also been a member of the Knights of Columbus since 1971, and all of that while being married to my mother. Again, thank you all very much. It's very much appreciated. He never got to go to class reunions or have a ceremony like this, obviously back in 1955. So we're all going to be, hopefully, at the Moon Dance, and there will be cake. So please join us when you're done with your meeting. We probably won't stick around for the rest of your meeting. Thank you again.
All right. One of the proudest moments for schools and your communities is presentation of diplomas. It happens once a year, and I think any one of you that have attended the ceremony that had children, grandchildren, family members, those are proud moments. This is definitely another one of those proud moments. I've heard tonight, you've led an exceptional life. Tremendous gift to the community of all the things that you've done, and great, warm, loving family. Definitely the definition of success. And it is my honor, and out of complete respect, that I'm going to turn over the duty of presentation of the diploma to former President Shirley Swinsky. Shirley, could you join me up here?
Now I gotta move.
It is my pleasure to present you with this diploma.
You know, I've been listening to your principal and my daughter Mary works for. So all the good things that I did, and most of it wouldn't happen if it wasn't for that little girl right there. She helped me through most of it. Believe me, it was tough to face the world without this.
So now that you have your diploma, maybe we can find you a job.
I gotta get up, go to work tomorrow. My job will never end. That's part of my problem. No.
Yes, yes it is.
I had a father that wasn't educated too well, but he was a real smart person. He knew how to run a business. And he sent me out into this world to negotiate contracts. I'd have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and be out at the airport to fly out to Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas, and talk to some real people. And I'm sure that some of them sensed that I was a dumb country boy. But I got the best of them anyway. I didn't give up. And I negotiated enough contracts that we was able to build a company. And he told me, I said, well, I don't really know how to talk to these people. He said, you will when you get there. Tell them what it's all about, and don't make any promises you can't keep. Well, I guess I did all right. But then, there was some real tough years in there, because, you know, to build a business like we got today, it takes money and debts. And, you know, as the years go by, you have to pay those debts back. And I see people shaking their heads. But we got through it all. But then, you know, there was some real tough years there. But in 1963, I got the biggest break of my lifetime. That's when my little sweetheart came along, Shirley, and she, from then on, it was easy. So Shirley, if you would you stand up and take a bow? She's a great part of my success, and I'm so sorry folks, I won't keep you myself. I know you've got work to do. But then, you know, Mary came by and she went and studied all over the world. She's got every degree that any one person can have. So she's helping me. She's babysitting me nearly every day. And then after that came my son Paul, because he's got his grandpa's intelligence for running a company. So we're doing fine. Right now we got over 100 people on our payroll. And if our financial secretary was here, she'd tell you what it's costing her. But we got good people. You have to know people and you gotta hire good people that will work for you. So anyway, first I want to thank Mary and the superintendent for putting this thing together. See, there again, as time went on, I got more and more people like that backing me up. Yet today, I could stay in bed in the morning, but because I got real people that work for the company. And my oldest daughter, Anna, she's another one. They're babysitting me all the time. So anyway, I want to thank all my friends, and I got a 60-year-old friend here someplace that drove up from Illinois and has got some grandkids that brought him to come here for this celebration. So, and there again, I want to thank all your people for putting up with me for tonight and being here to help me along through this thing.
And they're all invited to the moon dance.
Oh, yeah.
And there will definitely be more than cake.
And done some bacon in time if we don't eat up all the food. So as soon as I've done yakking away here, we'll go to move it. All right? Thank you.
I get to stand by the good looking guy here. You
Well, that was a pretty big moment. Wow. Pretty hard to top that. We should do that every meeting.
I think once a year is probably about what we can do before you get any good ideas.
Yeah. How could that not be a district-related positive happening?
And
right?
the very best, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can start on with the rest of our meeting here. We'll start off with the June and July meeting dates.
Okay. Our regular meeting would be scheduled for July 20th at 6 o'clock in Three Lakes at the Three Lakes Boardroom. I am going to propose a special meeting, and I tried to find a date to get our other person or group that's interested in presenting long-range facility studies in. That would be through Fay. And the date that they were given to me, the only one that I had before later in July, would have been June 30th. And so I'm asking the board if June 30th might be a possibility to hear their presentation. It would be a Zoom presentation. And then the second part of that, we could do my district administrator evaluation that evening.
Okay. So.
And that is not a Wednesday. I think it's a Thursday. So I don't know how that works for you, Josh, with reffing and all of that stuff.
I can make it work, but I know Michelle and I are both kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, we
Okay.
had softball then.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it something does that run quite late, or should we look for a different day?
No, I can
Because I can,
skip out and,
No, we're in Three Lakes, I know, so we'll be done about.
we're traveling, but that's all right. I can send Paul an email. That's fine.
would it help if we had a later start date time?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we can make it work.
Yeah.
I can.
Is there a better time?
I got a couple assistants that might be able to help me. So otherwise, I got plenty of parents that would be willing to help too. I can get half the game in, and then we can make it work.
Okay.
6 o'clock is fine.
6 o'clock is good for you, Stacy, as well?
Yep.
Terry?
6 p.m.
Yeah.
on 30 June.
On the
Yes.
30th?
Yes.
Or do we want to start earlier?
Earlier gets tough because then you get into work.
Okay.
So,
All right, 6 o'clock. And so that'll be a special meeting. So we'll need a motion to set that meeting.
I'll make a motion to set the special meeting for June 30th, 6 p.m. at Three Lakes. Cool.
Second.
All right, motion by Stacy, second by Terry. Any other further questions, comments, considerations? Hearing none. Call to vote. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Motion passes 5-0. And that's in addition to our regular meeting of July 20th.
Correct.
All right. Moving on to consider approval of the personnel report.
All right, reporting on the personnel this month is resignations. We have Donna Russell, paraprofessional, and Deb Goldsworthy, paraprofessional. And hirings are Tony Farrow, assistant girls basketball coach, Eric Struck, third grade teacher, and Trina Manella for speech and language therapy services.
All right, so we'll seek a motion for approval of the personnel report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Terry, second by Stacy.
Yep.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None heard, motion passes 5-0. All right, thank you for that report. And next, we go to consider approval of the 2022 through 2023 Three Lakes School District Employee Handbook.
Okay, in board docs, you'll have a link to both of your, the handbook and then a memo that I had sent that stated the areas to call to attention that would be changed or would be addressed this evening. Were you all able to pull that up, or
Yeah.
do you need to take a look at that? I'm going to just dive right in. There's not a lot of changes as far as most language goes. On the cover page, that was updated to show the 22-23 season, or handbook, professional handbook. On page 3, the long-range plan will be updated after we do our August board and staff retreat. We will have that come back to you once it's been placed into the document. And the same with page 4, the goals will also be updated after the August board administration staff planning retreat. Now that's going to be our 5-year plan, so that's going to be considerably different than what is there now, I would suspect. Page 5, this is just an update on our contracted days, just to make sure they're clarified. 187 contracted days, 174 teacher-student days, 9 professional development learning days, and 1 flex work day, 2.5 parent-teacher conference days, and a half a day for open house. Any questions on that? One note you might see is we pulled back 2 days that were for teacher development off type days and made them student contact. We felt we needed to have those 2 days back with kids. looking at page 29. I bring this to you because a lot of time was spent on technology, and what we've done is change the language to refer to all forms of social media or electronic media, includes all forms of social media. Now, this is an area that Steve Grzinski and I have already started working on, and the rest of the administrative team will look at it too. But we feel that we need to address this more in depth. So this is a summer project. I may be coming back to you with a change or, a revisit of language if we end up changing policy. Some of the language is just a little bit outdated, but when we started to pull it pieces and parts, we saw, let's just get to the main intent here, and then we were going to look at that.
So your intent is not to, so to speak, name all the
No.
potentials?
Because they
Because they
change.
change.
They change frequently. And we want to also bring some more language that isn't necessarily included in the handbook because times have grown with social media and expectations, and we will get that to you in more of a formal policy, which would be district policy, and that then becomes part of our handbook, which is also policy.
Okay.
On page 36, leave provision, this is probably where the brunt of the work has been done. On A4, staff members shall be allowed 3 personal days per year for personal business. Eliminate the following language delineating between the first 2 days and the third day, and add unused personal days to convert to sick days. This has been an absolute mess, to put it nicely, in trying to keep track of sick days that are, or personal days that are used or not used, and then rolling over personal days. And then if you throw in there, you can have a third personal day, but you have to pay for your benefits, your insurance, etc. It makes a real intensive project for our paperwork in the business office. And we talked about this quite a bit with the Eat List group. This wasn't a sudden decision. We talked about this throughout the year and determined that it could be 3 times per year for personal business. That is important that staff feels they have that to use. There are other staff members who will not take a personal day because they find a way to work around it or they just don't need it, And so to say you lose it if you don't use it, because at the end of the year, there's always that problem with subs anyways, and people are like, well, I'm not going to get those days. The purpose of professional days and personal days in this situation is to allow us to have staff take care of themselves. It shouldn't be that, should be the mentality. The other piece of this that has been a area of discussion on my part is it should never look like personal days are building up to an additional vacation within a teacher's contract. Teachers are contracted for 187 days for the school year. And in that time, our expectation through our contract is they are providing services. We are human and you have to keep the human factor. And there are times when you need personal days, just as there are times when you are sick. So I think in working with the staff, this is the best of both worlds, because those people who are there, they're not missing out of the classroom time. They might have an encounter with a sick child maybe a few years down the road or themselves. If they don't use their personal times and they can use it as a sick time, it benefits the district. We're saving sub costs, and it's being used for the purpose that its intention is meant to be. That was a lot of words to kind of give you the summary of the thinking back there. I'll welcome questions or further conversation on that.
I'm trying to remember, is there a cap on days that can be accrued?
We will not accrue. Oh, for sick time, you mean?
Yeah.
120. Mm-hmm.
I thought that's what.
Yeah. And this would make for no rollover on personal days, so you wouldn't see that. With COVID, we had up to 6 personal days, and then people tend to sometimes look at it as a time when it's not a vacation. Well, 6 days out of the classroom to me is too much. We don't want to be extending vacations, or if possible. I mean, there are situations always that are unique and individualized, but I really think that our best education happens when our staff is there. And if we can take care of our staff and still keep the intent of what the contract is, that is the answer for everybody. Any questions on that one?
No, not here.
Okay, then on A5, just because everything has gone up, I'm increasing that room rate to $200, or if it's at a conference center, the conference rate. It saves traveling, it's generally pretty close in price, but sometimes staff has tried to get a hotel room that's removed from the place, and then they're paying the parking, they're paying a lot of other fees, and if there's blocks of rooms reserved, I'd like to encourage the staff to stay at that conference for the purpose of networking and just being able to take in the full experience. We don't have overuse of this every year. It seems to be balanced out. Most people don't go every year. It is in the contract that they could, but anytime they can be professionally developed, to be bringing it back to us, I'm all about supporting that. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, then evaluation procedures, Appendix B. We eliminated E because it's no longer applicable. The educator effectiveness framework is in place, and that is what we're using, so we didn't need that statement anymore. It was old language. On page 39, the hours, loads, and considerations. B, this is one that we talked a lot about last year, and we've talked about it this year, but we're going to eliminate the sign-out sheet that has to be completed upon each time leaving the building, and this is specific to lunchtime. If somebody leaves every day at the same time, we're going to ask that they send an email to their principal or their secretary. The purpose I want to know where people are is not because I'm nosy as much as if we'd have a lockdown or something going on, I don't want to be looking for a teacher because they're not where their designated area is. But if I know every day at 11:30 to 12 o'clock, they go across the street because that's where they live and that's where they have lunch. If I have that documentation there, if the principals have it, then that covers that purpose. It's one of those little things, but it is kind of a bone of contention for some folks because they feel like, you know where I'm going every day. Well, I think this addresses that problem. However, when they're leaving for a prep or something that's not a normal routine, then the sign out has to be completed. Okay, and then E, language has been adjusted to reflect equity in teaching loads, including elementary and secondary. The word all replaces 7 through 12. In the past, it only looked at the secondary teachers. And language eliminated that reflects normal teaching expectations. Overloads really is old language that comes from, back really in the 8 period teaching day and pre-Act 10 when you had a different kind of contract. When I look at the reasoning here, and I think of an elementary teacher, their preps every day include English, language arts, and writing, that can be a really big one, a double one, math, science, social studies, and then other things. So as an average, teachers are carrying 4, 5, usually 5 or more preps that equal to what the teacher at the secondary level would do. When we're getting up higher and you're carrying some of the independent courses or personalized learning, the EAT list really, they agreed with this. They said that overload begins when you're at 6 or more preps, and then we adjusted the rate of pay so it comes out mathematically correct for $600 to the course, or there's a cap of $1,000 for the year. And this is not surprising language to anybody. This was talked on at length for actually the last couple of years because it did seem like it was separating elementary staff from the high school staff, and they both have very busy schedules with different looks to them, but we wanted to, validate that everybody is working hard.
So for the elementary, there's a definition of what each prep would consist as far
Yes.
as the subject matter.
And I plan to actually explain that at our back to school meeting, how I came up with the numbers, and I did talk it through with Steve already for his thoughts, and he seemed to think it made it work because we're talking about numbers of minutes here in front of students, and that's where the equity piece comes in there.
Okay.
Questions on that? It shouldn't have had so much fanfare because to get to this took hours of discussion and days. But I think this is really going to clarify it, and it's actually going to bring staff together instead of feeling like
Sure.
there's a separation.
Yep.
And then on page 42, this is a suggestion, and I did include some information in your board docs where my feelings fell on this. They have requested, I'm going to open up the language myself, that the board entertains a discussion about looking at changing the retirement years of service from 30 years as reaching full-time retirement to 25 years. They'd like that to be considered for a few different reasons. I think the first and foremost is maybe this is the first time this year in several years that we had some people seeking retirement before reaching 30 years. The last few years that I've been here, the people have been here like 38 years, Mr. Gorney and some of those other folks. So that was something that brought it to attention. Another statement that was shared was this could potentially attract other people who are working in different districts. Maybe they're 8 or 9 or 10 years in, and they want to have a benefit for getting to the district. You know, knowing that at 25 years you could still hit that 57. If you came at 32 and you worked for 25 years, you hit 57. That gets you to your 8 years out from retirement in your Medicare language. This is not to add time of post-employment benefits or say I'm done at 50 and so then I'm going to have 15 years of coverage. That is not where this intent is coming. It's to say that you could be coming into the district and starting over and putting in 25 years. I did say I would bring it for discussion. I've talked a lot about it, both, for, and I don't want to say against, but contradictions or in opposition, if you will. Post-employment benefits may not seem real big in our district, but they are, and they do add up considerably. And I think that when we're looking long range, we've always got to be thinking about, number one, taking care of those people who have invested in us and made us their career. That's very important, and I think rewarding those who have come and stuck for these years is also very important. And I would also say that our district, the board, has stood by with pride, paying very well our teachers, to the point that our teachers can plan for own personal retirement possibly because they are not at the lowest at the pay scale, or other plans that they can make. I think of people like my child's age now, early 30s, they have these things. They figured it out. They're a lot smarter than I was. Early on, they've realized that you don't count on Medicare being there in 40 years because it might not be. So I just want you to have the conversation here about where you fall on it. Is this something that I should continue allowing the conversation, or is that something that as a board you feel that we're firm with our 30 years at this point and that's where we stick? Mike, I'll turn that back to you for
Sure.
conversation.
I think you bring up several good points. First of all, being that the board has always looked to be, I think, rewarding our teachers as much as we possibly can, and leading many districts in that regard, because anytime that any employer that wants to retain high quality employees, you can't be offering at below average in salaries and wages and such. And so we've always taken the approach of being on the flip side of that, and rewarding our teachers and staff members each and every year, for all the good things that they deliver to our students each and every year. And so I think that's important, and we've done that for many, many years, and it's served us well. And I totally agree that we all have to plan for our retirement starting early, and even if it's a little bit initially, and if the extra pay that we have offered to our staff helps in that regard, I think that's, yeah, and again, that's their decision to do with whatever they receive and pay. You know, I always look in a situation like this is if we make a change, I like to see a benefit for both parties. And I can fully appreciate the request by staff members. I get that. Does it help the district as a whole to make this change? That would be, I guess I've struggled with how that would help, I guess. Again, I think if somebody's looking to come in our district, I think they're first looking at the reputation of the district, the size, the quality of the delivery of the education that we deliver, and of course the annual pay. And I think all those things, I think we checked the box off quite well. I'm not sure if this would be something that would help us. I guess I'm struggling at this point to recommend that change on my opinion. So those are my thoughts.
Job jumping is getting to be more and more and more common. I think you're going to see less and less employees that are in it for the long term. I think we do have a little bit of a benefit being a tighter knit community. We might see more than others. I'm with Mike. In that, I mean, I could be swayed. If we went to 25 years, maybe we changed the maximum period from 8 to maybe 6, something of that sort.
8 years to what?
That the I was just looking for teachers who have worked at least 30 years prior to retirement, district will pay X amount a month towards health insurance premium for qualified employees for coverage that was in effect. Subject to eligibility rules and regulations that carry for a period of 8 years, or until the employee becomes eligible for Medicare, or until the employee obtains coverage from another employer, whichever comes first. So maybe the 8 get changed to 6. Something of that sort, to lengthen the maximum period. To shorten the maximum period that the school would be responsible.
Okay. Anybody else? Terry?
No.
No? Okay.
I'm comfortable where it's at.
Stacy?
Yep.
Michelle?
It's good where it's at.
Okay. So, I mean, this is one of the pieces to the whole puzzle, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And so we make a motion on approval. We have the option of changing this from 30 to 25 years. Or we look at this here on its own at another separate meeting and discussion in terms of moving to a change and considering what Josh has suggested, or if there's something else that comes up. So, do you have any recommendations, Terry?
Well, my recommendation would be at this point that we leave the language as is, because there would be a lot more than just, we picked 6 years, but I would want to get some actual
I was just throwing
data,
right.
that would go with that. Also, when we're doing something that's this big of a change, that's going to come with a lot of discussion with the Eat List group and other people who would be involved. Actually, those who aren't involved in Eat List either. There's other employees who this would impact. My suggestion at this point would be that we approve the handbook with the changes while keeping the original language as was stated at this time. And then that is something that we can look at this next school year, work towards it, come up with some ideas, and before we would come back a year from now, we would have that information to share with you in a well done and well thought out process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So at this point, we would be crossing out, consider changing 30 to 25
Correct.
years.
Yeah, and that's just then highlight that, that's not in the official handbook, so,
All right.
yeah,
So otherwise, the rest of that paragraph is as was before.
in the handbook, yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody clear on that?
Yes.
Very good. And I guess that was, yeah, it's just a date change then on the last page.
Mhm.
Okay.
Terry, I guess further questions I would have, should you, or when you have more conversations in regards to that, would any past employees, past retirees be grandfathered in? Would be an interesting thing that I'm sure could possibly get brought up. Also, where do current employees fall who might be at 26 years past that mark, or coming up, at 20, they're at 23 maybe. Is there some sort of a grace period for employees that are at particular benchmarks?
I would agree with you, Josh. And I think we need to have the hard numbers to look at that the right way, to know how it will impact us, the employee and the budget.
Okay. Very good. So, we all heard the changes here proposed for the employee handbook. Is someone prepared to make a motion?
I will approve the changes to the 2022-2023 TLSD employee handbook as presented, with no change to the retirement years.
Second.
Michelle.
Yes.
All right, so a motion by Josh, second by Michelle. Any other questions, comments, considerations? Hearing none, I'll call to vote. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you to all that have put time and effort into all the changes and updating. Much appreciated. All right. Next, we move on to discuss the co-op with Phelps JV basketball, boys and girls. We'll start off with boys basketball, boys and girls basketball. And so we have another one that follows with volleyball. Who's going to start on this one?
Who would you like to have start? I can start just quickly. I
right.
included a couple of pieces of information for you. I included a memo that was from February 19th, 2020, and I want to point out that it had kind of captured some of the history, what brought us to that point, and we weren't moving towards it very quickly, but the focus had been on as a varsity rather than a junior varsity co-op. So in the past year, in talking with Jason and with Dr. Hill, the thought was perhaps there would be some room to look at a junior varsity opportunity instead. So that's what has been driving this conversation. Last month we tabled it because of the time constraints, and we did have some other folks from the community that wanted to share more information. And I did get a couple of pieces of information. I don't know if anyone else did, about their thoughts and feelings about expanding the co-op. And then as well as Jason has some talking points that I put in your board packet for you to review that he put together, and how the co-op would impact or potentially influence the Three Lakes Phelps Co-op. I wrote a memo to you just outlining things briefly, and I've got to tell you that I did talk to Charlie at length about this. I have since I've been here, but I don't think he has a firm recommendation at this moment. As I put in your information, that we have a girls basketball coach who is not in favor at this time. We have a boys basketball coach who does not take a firm position one way or the other at this time. I have not been at the meeting, but that is what I understand. Jason can probably speak to it more thoroughly than I can. And then, well, we're not talking volleyball right now. There's a few parents who are opposed to it, but just a few. I don't have overwhelming people coming out one way or the other. In talking with Justin, again, co-ops are supposed to benefit both programs, and I think Jason laid out some pretty good reasons why it can be beneficial to both programs. I think you need to talk about it here, though, so instead of spending a lot of energy and time that Jason doesn't have, that Justin and I, and Charlie, we're all limited. We want to have a course of direction on this. I like coming to you as a board and saying, I have a firm recommendation telling you this is what we should do and this is why. And I cannot give you that firm direction today. That's why this item was moved from an action to a discussion to start building some background and some history and let you go from there and see where you as a board feel we land and what you would like to do with it.
Okay. All right. So as Terry stated, we're not looking for any action at this point. It's just pure discussion. So a chance for administration. Charlie is not here tonight. Maybe Justin has some opinions on his thoughts on this. And basically expressed, what everyone's thoughts are moving forward here in the line of a possible potential future expansion of co-ops. At this point, we've enjoyed a good deal of success with many of the co-ops that we've done thus far, and we continue to have, I think, broad-based support for many of the co-op programs that we've got, and I totally agree with what Terry said. There are many reasons that we've done the co-ops at this point, and it's been very beneficial to both districts, and I think that's really the only way it can really work, so that because any partnership is only as strong as the weak link, and if one of the districts in that co-op isn't there to support it, it just doesn't simply work as well as it possibly could. And in many cases, the ones that we've done thus far have worked quite well. And I think there have been many benefits to the programs. Case in point, many rural schools are fighting for enrollment numbers. It's not us. It's not just Phelps. It's any rural schools. And many of the programs that have been put in place that Three Lakes has enjoyed came to be in the early 2000s when our enrollment was 800 students. Now we're a little over 500. And so fortunately we've been successful in continuing the programs, and they've been very successful. So at this point, we've got the one in front of us here, basketball, which I guess has been kind of a back and forth. I think we tried to do something earlier, and it didn't work for Phelps at the time, and
should have worked for Phelps at the time. and I can remember Ryan sitting on the bench with two kids next to him at one point in time. I understand it can go both ways.
So sometimes it's timing is what it amounts to be, and
the right people at the table.
Yep, exactly. So I guess I am open to hear others' opinions on what they would like to, what their thoughts are. Again, this is not an action item. Should there look like there's some energy one way or the other, we can put this on a future board agenda. So we're free to speak.
Well, my first thought is looking at the numbers of our current Three Lakes students that would be playing on the boys and girls. And, I have kids in that age group, so I know for a fact that the numbers are going to be going up. We have some really talented girls coming into freshman year, some talented boys coming in. So I see them even looking into 8th grade. So I feel like our numbers are going to rise. And nothing hurts me more than watching kids have to sit on the bench and not get that opportunity. And I feel like if we bring more kids in, what are we doing for our students? That's just and I've had some chatter from community members as well that feel that it's not the right time right now.
I haven't heard much for positive chatter either. It's great for the Phelps kids. I mean, it's wonderful that we can bring them in and give them a program. But I don't know that it's been as beneficial as you maybe think that it was. I mean, 1-2 kids here, maybe. And with risking moving up, I mean, even some of the talking points, risking moving up a division.
But it doesn't move up for JV jobs.
I know. I'm just as a whole. I'm talking as a whole. Programs are strong. Sports programs down all the way down to T-ball are very strong right now. I also feel for the Phelps community because they are now traveling, some of them are traveling 45 minutes one way to get to practice. I mean, it's tough on the parents, it's tough on the kids. Some of the games that we travel to right now, again, I mean, are long ways. We travel all the way down to Wabeno from Phelps. It's not a short trip for softball. The co-op as a whole, I don't know. I struggle with.
Beyond the JV basketball?
Beyond the JV.
Okay. All right. Terry?
Well, I think I disagree with both of those views. We have a responsibility towards our kids and presenting our kids and having them have these opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have a general view of education from a broader statewide vantage point where, their kids are deserving of having the best that they can get them. And if they're in here pushing us for this co-op, unless there's some cost override or something that's really significant, I would personally come down on as far as I'm concerned, we could join school districts. I believe in sharing, and I believe in sharing what's good for us, and if that can help Phelps, if Phelps can help us, then I'm all for it.
Well, and there was a period, if Brad Swinski was here, Brad was at risk of not having a senior year of baseball without the co-op. So, I mean, there are moments in time where the co-op has continued to support Three Lakes programs. There was a soccer season a few years ago that if it wouldn't have been for the 3 or 4 Phelps kids that came in down and played, I don't think there would have been a soccer season. So, yes, we don't contribute high numbers, and Stacy, to your comment, if Jack and I are on the same team and we're going against each other, it's just one more person to make somebody better. It really is. And nothing's given in this world. I think we just witnessed that. And everything has to be worked for and earned, and the person next to you, it doesn't matter where they come from. It's just pushing you to get better. So.
And Terry, I'm not, I don't want to be taken the wrong way. I'm not saying to deny these kids an opportunity.
Right. Neither am I. I'm just saying
they're driving through a district. They're driving through another district that could be a potential one for them in order to get to ours.
So why?
That's the biggest part I struggle with from a Phelps parent and child point of view, from a time value point of view, that I struggle with.
Okay, so a couple things, Josh. Why don't you guys co-op hockey with Northern Pines? They're closer than Rylander.
Well, because we're used to and we got dropped by them. That's the answer.
And for the hockey co-op, do you guys help kids and parents get to the program? Or kids get to the program? Do you guys provide transportation
don't.
for the kids
No.
to get down there?
No.
Oh.
No.
So it's, you guys aren't supporting that aspect of it, where we are. We're providing that transportation. Parents don't have to do a thing. Pick their kid up from Phelps School like they normally would. They get home 35 minutes later, back to the Phelps School. Our parents know that and understand that, and those kids that want that opportunity take advantage of it. The ones that don't.
Would you have more kids that would play if they, do you feel you might have more kids that would play if they didn't have to spend over an hour on the bus every day to get to practice?
No. The ones that are playing, the ones that are committing to it are the ones that want to play. And I think in any level of coaching or athletics, you're gonna find kids that come along for the ride. And I don't think we have too many kids that just come along for a ride, for an extra hour of travel. Another benefit, it could have taken place this year as far as the JV girls co-op. There's some girls that did not get significant playing time, and if there would have been the 2, 3 girls, 4 girls from Phelps that came down and played, it would have made the rest of those girls better this year to have that opportunity. Yes, there's a tremendous freshman girls group. I worked with them for 4 weeks through the junior high program. They're a great group of girls coming up. And I hope the numbers carry them all the way through, because they need a year of JV for sure. Some of those freshmen would not be ready to play varsity basketball, in my opinion. So it's about opportunities and providing them for kids. And I think as Phelps, I mean, we've tried to be respectful of divisional alignment. I made note of, the workaround that I came up with the year of football, so that we made sure that our enrollment was under 200. When Charlie came to me about wrestling and said, I understand you're trying to preserve your basketball and not encouraging kids from wrestling. Do you want to get out? Sure, we'll get out. So I think we've done everything we can to make it as easy and as beneficial for you guys as we possibly can. And if kids decide that, hey, I want to be a varsity athlete, maybe Three Lakes then becomes their option. And like I made note, I know one of those 28 open enrollments you guys approved last month, one's a freshman girl. So.
I know some of the co-op sports, and again, I know the entire co-op is not on the agenda, but I guess again, just using that as a talking point here. I know some of the things that we've had is, some years we've had students from Phelps and other years we have not. In basketball, which is basically on the agenda item that we're on right now, one of the biggest struggles I have in my mind is just it's the size of the team. In basketball, we need 5 players, and as a whole, I would like to think that we'd be able to continue to support the basketball team in Three Lakes. It doesn't require the higher numbers that some of the other team sports do, and that to me might be one that might be more of a struggle than some of the others are. But in terms of history, let's just take this year for instance. In some of the co-op sports that we've got right now, do you recall on how many students we've had from Phelps this year?
Softball, we had 4 girls start, and we had 3 finish. Track, we had 2 individuals participate, none for girls soccer, and then we had 3 boys participating in baseball. Those would be spring numbers. So that's 6, 10 roughly.
And let's just dial back 3-4 years.
We had
ago.
us in baseball the year that I mentioned with Brad Swinski. I think we were at 8 kids coming down for baseball. Softball had been 1 to, well, I'll throw 0 in there because there was a year 0 due to some social issues. And track has generally been 1 to 3. Girls soccer's been a tough one because it hasn't been a big thing. Going to fall sports, we've had generally a football player or 2. Obviously this year we had an outstanding football player that contributed immensely. Was an all-state qualifier. Cross country, we did not have a runner this year. We have had cross country in the past. And soccer, again, this year we had 3 that started, 2 that finished. 1 kept getting concussions off the field. But when you look at percentages of participation, spring sports, there's over 30, closer to 40% of our high school is participating in something. I would take those participation numbers and run them against any other school, and it's probably very similar, if not better. I tried to make the point in the one example that I shared. If our numbers were back in the 30s, mid-30s to high 30s, I think we could do it. I really do. There's not a school in the state right now running any basketball or volleyball programs on the varsity level that I can find that are in the 20s. There's just not a school in the state that can do it. So it just comes down to students that are willing to participate and engage, and I think we're going through, we've been welcomed into the youth programs at a variety of different sports and levels, and hopefully that continues to grow and facilitate. But then where do they go? What do they do? So I think there was a different path at one point in time, and I think that path has branched off, and it's not going in the direction that we had anticipated it to go probably 5 or 6 years ago. And so how do we find a path again that we can set a goal to get to? Because I think in 5 or 6 years, some of these larger groups coming through your middle school that will exit out, the 25-26 school year, and you guys start to look at high school numbers that are well below 150 again, it could change things.
What I'm seeing here on the basketball side, on the girls' side, we're not getting support from the coach to move forward on this. Boys could be one way or the other. One of the things that I always look at is grassroots support, for the program, especially at the coach level. Coaches put in a tremendous amount of time. They're the ones that are going to be responsible for building the programs and kind of really leading the direction of it. And I struggle a little bit not seeing that support on the girls' side. And then I guess it didn't seem like a yes on the boys.
I would have thought that it would have been portrayed differently to Terry, because in the meeting that I had, it was kind of maybe the other way, but maybe they don't want to express their feelings in front of me, and that's fine.
Jason, will you share why you guys didn't join us in 2013?
Yep. I had 2 very
I was part of that.
Yep.
I just don't.
I had two board members that were looking out for the direct interests of their own children, and they felt like they were going to make a decision to benefit in the moment their own children. And I have one of those board members that is still on the board that now tells me it is the biggest regret they ever had as a board of not doing it. So, I mean, that's maybe a thing that happens with school boards. Sometimes people get on for more personal reasons, and they don't always see things holistically, especially, I get a coach's job is to look at their program and the kids that are within that program. An athletic director is supposed to manage the coaches and look at athletics as a whole. And then you have the principals and the superintendent and then the school board that needs to look at the whole building. And I was trying to get them to understand what was coming and what would be our future if we made that decision, and now we're there. And that's really the biggest thing.
Thank you.
Where is Charlie's view? He doesn't have one way or another. I mean, I think our athletic director should be playing a big part in this as well, in supporting what he views as important. I mean, he knows he's the person. I mean, I guess I would, and I'm not really seeing one way or another from any of the documents. So I guess I would be curious as to what his thoughts are as an athletic director.
Mhm. Yep, and I've talked with him at length, and I'm going to put Justin kind of on the spot because maybe you can help that conversation. That's why I began this conversation with, I like nothing better to be able to give you a firm direction based on the people who are reporting to me. And that's not what I've been given. That's what I've been asked for, that I'm asking for. And, same with Jason. I want to be able to give a clear direction and say, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this right. But that just hasn't rose to the top recently. Would you like to elaborate?
Sure. I don't know. I can't speak for Charlie. I can speak from a principal perspective. The easy answer is if it benefits both schools, both communities, do it. I've seen some really awful co-op situations. I've seen some really great ones. Not here necessarily. I'm talking other places, but generally speaking, I'll speak from a parent standpoint. I've seen it here be a beautiful thing. I've seen it here be a thing where, as a youth coach, I'm getting emails fairly consistently. Hey, how come my kid's not coming from a spot where there's 16 this year, last year 21 kids in the softball dugout? Hey, how come my kid doesn't get to play very much, but I see those Phelps kids playing? That's. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that's what some of our folks in the community who are sending their kids to us feel like, because those kids and those parents are going to be in the middle school and high school eventually, right? Some are there already. And those are the same folks you guys are hearing from that I'm hearing from. It's like, why would we ever think about doing this? We've got 30 kids in the volleyball program. I know we're not in volleyball yet, but I'm skipping ahead. 30 kids in the volleyball program, why would we do this? Well, the sports guy side of me says that more competition in the arena makes everybody better, But that argument doesn't go so far if your child is planted on the pine while maybe a kid from a different school district is getting more opportunity. Because every parent wants their kid to have opportunity when it comes to the sporting world. That's just a blanket statement you can say everywhere you ever will be in every high school in the world, right? So I'm kind of just babbling around things that you mostly know about. I think in some of our spots, it works beautifully well. You hit on it, Mike, where you have sports that need a few more bodies. Those sports, it works really well. In places where we don't, that's where you get coaches saying, no, we don't want this, we don't need this, But from Jason's perspective, and probably from all of you, like, let's make a decision on this one or the other and live with it, because it seems like it kind of percolates up every few seasons, right? Like, and I get Jason's perspective on it completely. I understand the Phelps plea. It's a tough spot to be in. And yeah, we want to help all kids. So if we're struggling for a right or wrong answer here, I don't think you're going to find one. I really don't. There's in the one sport that I can think of real recently, girls basketball. We're a step behind now because there's a whole bunch of kids that didn't get varsity time last year that had no place to play basketball. It would have been wonderful to have a few Phelps girls there, so we could have swung a JV program and gotten those kids. We'll be paying for that in terms of our kids' struggles for a little bit here, for sure. But you've got a girls' basketball program that says, now we're good, we don't need it. So it's so fluid. It's so fluid. That's a tricky part. There is no answer that would be good from now until the end of time. So I'm an advocate for, as an athletic department, planning ahead and looking at numbers, because you can predict. Josh hit on it. The softball team is a good example. There's kids stacked up in the dugouts like cordwood. It's awesome. It's a beautiful thing. And then some sports maybe not so much, but I think in general, by and large, and that's why we're hearing from a few parents, they see that there's good numbers coming in most of our sporting programs, right? So, and I'm not saying that a couple of parents should drive the bus, but they are certainly willing to share with us their opinions on it. And we gotta listen to everybody in the mix. So I'm all for being fluid with it, and if it works and for both, we do it. If not, we don't. That's.
Michelle, do you have any thoughts?
I did, but they've been answered, so.
Okay.
You know, the varsity level is definitely, that's definitely a competition thing. And like Justin said, that's where, you'd like to get the cream of the crop out there on the court or field to fill the positions. And that's a competitive nature. You need to be the best to be out there playing.
Yeah.
Like Justin said, the JV might need to be fluid. It might be year to year, sport to sport thing. If we've got 14 kids out for a JV basketball team, we don't need any more. If we've got 4, in the case of JV basketball, girls basketball, maybe then obviously it pays dividends. There is no. I don't think there is a right wrong answer here. It's going to have to be something that is. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be in front of us for a long time to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a number of years ago, I was on the board and we had a discussion. It was actually an action item on fall sports, whether we cut soccer or football. And we had our soccer parents on one side, we had our football parents on the other. And I'm looking at it as a board member, I know people on both sides, right? And this is our community. But we're split by a sport. And the decision at that time was not to cut any sport, it was basically to increase participation. And I think we've made some good ground in that direction. And I don't see any other option as depending upon where our enrollment continues to go, we have to continue to try to engage our students as much as we possibly can. In terms of the co-oping with Phelps, I struggle on 2 points for the item that we're currently talking about basketball. 1, it takes 5 people to be on a team. And 2, if I don't have support from my coaches who, as a board, we hire the best person that we possibly can consider, for leading the team, the program, and they're the ones that basically are building the program. And my gosh, they put hours and hours on end into developing these programs. And if I can't get any clear support for going to a co-op and then to come down as a top-down decision, I struggle with that. To try to push for something that they don't want. That's my camp.
I guess, and Charlie's not here, so I can't ask this question. But maybe you guys have heard through Charlie or prior. Has there ever been a Phelps parent that has contacted anybody here about their child not playing or playing time of any fashion? Because I had a number of kids this year that participated in spring sports that we created JV opportunities, and they saw very limited opportunity at the JV level. And through conversations, because I had the privilege of driving them most nights, I said, work harder, do more. If you want to earn it, go get it. And I guess in a JV situation, if they sit the sideline, they sit the sideline. If they earn their way into it, what's the difference of it being a Phelps kid earning their way into it or anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is definitely opportunities in co-ops where it really benefits both districts. And I guess from what I'm hearing from some of the members of the board here, overall, I'm not seeing the energy moving towards putting this on a future agenda item, at least not in the near future, unless something changes from some of the input that we're getting from the coaches and athletic director, et cetera. So,
Have we heard from all the coaches or
well,
not any?
I guess on this particular one here.
It'll be on this one.
Just that one.
So,
Again, I think we,
Say something as a coach.
Yes, please.
I've sat in the coaches' meetings, been there, and it's pretty much 50-50, split down the middle, the baseball, and they've used the Phelps kids in the past. Was it like 3 years ago? A number of Phelps kids were on that team. As the soccer coach, we used the soccer players, and they have contributed in the past. We've had an all-conference goalie, Hunter, 2 years ago. It's 50-50 when you sit in there and you listen to the coaches. As a coach, I don't see how not having a JV program feed into your varsity program is beneficiary when you could have had that JV squad helping out, like Justin said. That's huge. But I coached with Jason with junior high basketball this past year, and I really don't think this is a fluid thing. I know you want it to be or mentioned it, but I don't think it's fair to the Phelps kids. Well, you can play this year, but maybe next year you won't be able to. I think we have to take and say, yes, you're going to do this, and maybe drive some competition up through the players that are coming in. More players is only going to make the kids better, in my opinion. It's tough to practice even on a basketball court. Yeah, there's only 5 kids, but you need minimum of 10 if you want to practice against a defense. Okay? So the more players that are there, the better off the team is. Plus, if you got Joel Schmold from Phelps that's hitting threes, you got 2 or 3 kids looking at that going, maybe I need to come to practice. I'm not assured a starting position just because I'm showing up and our numbers are low. And I think you have to take and say, yes, this is something that's going to happen, or it's not going to happen, because in a year, maybe they do want to go to Pines then, because then it'll give their kids an opportunity. The experiences I've had with the Phelps kids has been positive, funny at times, but positive, and don't regret the fact that we did have kids on the team.
and we have many teams that we do co-op currently,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so, I appreciate your points, Jack. I still, my opinion is if the coach isn't there.
See, and I don't understand why the coach couldn't have been there this year.
Well,
looking at
and
I just
I'm not-
I don't understand how a girls basketball coach could see that as
So-
being non-beneficial. So I
We've asked for their input,
yeah.
so.
But ultimately, we're the ones that are gonna make the decision.
That is true, yeah.
And I appreciate having been a coach in the Blue Jay system one time, years
Yeah.
ago. I mean, you take the coach's input, and it's very seriously, you would like the input to be positive, but we need to do the best for the school, and we need to do the best for best considerations, or give the best consideration to the Phelps thing. And I sort of agree with the two guys here when you say, you ought to nail this thing down, and there either ought to be an opportunity or there ought to not be an opportunity. And you can't be, I don't understand how you can be fluid year to year. That doesn't get you much of any place except in more of these discussions.
I'm sure Josh doesn't appreciate the emails begging for refs or canceling contracts when games are changed or things like that because they go off of a schedule,
Well, we see we're not unanimous on the board here, right?
Well, it's just a discussion, so.
Yeah, and so, Terry, questions on your point in terms of moving forward with this?
Well, I would not be comfortable with you as a board moving forward at this point because we've got a couple select voices that are being shared. I do believe if a decision was made, potentially myself and Justin would have a whole lot of phone calls asking why what happened here happened. And they know this is on the agenda for discussion, but they're not sitting here tonight. I think that sports is what you talked about. It can bring a community together with pride and excitement in a state championship, or it can divide a school district, soccer and football on either side, and people who are best friends all of a sudden can't look at each other. And I'm not about dividing our district. I'm about bringing us together. And I do think our parents have to have at least the opportunity and the viewpoint to share and say. I understand the coaches should support it. That's what you look for, but coaches also come and they go. You hope they come and they stay. But you also have to think about, it can't be based on the one person. However, when you have something stacked against you, that's not a good starting point. It has been suggested, make this top-down. Make it a top-down decision and then live with it. I just think that making a top-down decision and living with it could really work to the detriment of us in a district. Because there are people who are only hearing fringes and pieces, and I want to live also in the world of reality that the people who are our taxpayers and constituents also need to feel heard, and I don't want to alienate them over something, and I don't want to say just sports, but really, do we want that to be what they call the hill we die on if we're trying to look at the bigger picture? So a lot more information, I think. I don't know that we'll get more information, but I think many more voices would have to be heard by this school board before you could comfortably take a firm stand on what direction we want to go.
Yeah, and at this point, we don't have the co-op, right?
Not with JV, no. We do not.
And so unless something changes, I guess I don't see us reconsidering it until we get either different input from coaches, athletic director, and when I hear that support, then that would be something that I would have to consider.
Like Justin was saying, there's good co-ops. There's co-ops that work out well. There's co-ops that don't work out so well, and I'm not sure what the percentage of those are when numbers are considered. But yeah, when your program is short, any co-op is a great thing. I mean, because it keeps your program. When you have, and it kind of depends on which side of the fence that you're looking from. When you have 14 kids for a JV team, and all of a sudden you add 4 more, and now you've got enough for 2 teams, or just one big team if you don't have facilities for 2. You know, there's the bad thing. I mean, it's like you say, there's way more input, there's way more discussion that would need to be had, and I don't know, it is not an easy thing to think about.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's input on this, and so at this point, unless we hear something different, I guess we will continue the direction that we have, where we don't have the co-op with the girls and boys basketball. So, all right. Okay, so we move on to the next one. And discussing the co-op, again, discussion, co-op with Phelps JV volleyball.
And the reason these two were split out was because I think the basketball situation could be looked at very differently than the volleyball situation. Volleyball, we do know that there are a lot of numbers in the program support. Those people who know better could comment, but and this is a case where both the former head coach and the assistant coach are not in support of it, and wanted to make sure that they had expressed that previously, but make sure that was brought forward. And I think also the discussion here was to how many kids are going to play or not play. All the same points would come forward. I maybe am missing some. I don't know, Jason, if you have.
The only point of adding it in was everything else would then be shared in a co-op.
Sure.
Why would volleyball be left on its own little island?
That was the main impetus in the beginning conversations, yeah.
So, really nothing else changes from our point of view as far as volleyball. You know, again, we will maybe in volleyball have enough to hold together a team. It's hard to predict, but what I can tell you is, again, we're pulling in kids that I feel as an athletic director aren't committed. We're pulling in kids to create a program. You're still only going to get the kids that would be committed to that extra hour of time and sacrifices that go with it, because Josh is right, travel schedules. I mean, there was track meets that I was driving back and forth, and I should have probably slept in my office, but, you know, that's the way it goes. So you get the kids that are truly committed to the sport that they're signed up for.
Okay. All right. Any new thoughts on the volleyball?
What's the financial contribution for sports?
We pay on a percentage basis per participant, so
Okay.
Margot here. And sends us an invoice for it.
Okay.
And so, yeah, all the totals go in, and we pay on a,
If there's 1 out of 10 kids, you pay a tenth of the cost.
yep. Which, that was designed in the original co-op agreement from, Terry, you could probably answer it quicker than I could. But there is a document that explains
Sure.
it.
Sure.
I would like to change that, however. It's administratively so time consuming for the number of kids that I really think you would want your business manager spending their time on something that doesn't take the type of detail that it takes. I would like to change it to, let's say, take your 4 sports that are in the co-op, add up your cost, regardless of which sport it is. Come up with an average cost per child and bill them that way, versus me picking through every bus bill that comes through and figuring out the transportation, the cost of each coach, the cost of this, the cost of the workers, the refs, and all of that. It takes me hours and hours.
So
And it's
that's
so
sep-
impractical. It's terribly impractical. I'm just gonna say I can say that. So I actually was going to talk to Terry about that, and I already talked to Charlie about it, because personally, I think it's a terrible waste of my time. That I can be doing a lot more good things for the district to help you bring in some big bucks, or put my efforts on things that are going to amount to a lot more than picking through bus bills and picking through refs and officials and the woofers codes. You know, each board has a separate code. So then when the payment comes in, I have to split this receipt between umpteen codes. It's just, I don't like it. It's not practical. It's not administratively practical. So anyway, that's what I was going to propose to you.
Well then.
Since it came up.
Now that you asked.
Well, I
think it needs
think
to be
we've got to
changed.
carry it out for this year and get through this year, and that can be something that, through what you and Terry can come up with, Terry and Lisa and I can sit down and we can take a look at it.
Sounds good. The next business manager will love me if I get that changed.
Okay. Other board members, Terry? No? Josh?
I will make one other quick comment. There is, and there was, some participation clauses in there about home games in Phelps. And I have not held true to those in recent years, because we have played soccer up there when there's conflict. And we do have a very nice facility, but with any of the other sports, we have not hosted a game in quite a number of years, because, well, spring sports are a disaster to begin with. So, in rescheduling things and, you know, maintaining 2 fields and paying the costs of that and then figuring that into the equation,
Right.
It just hasn't been beneficial, so.
And you're further north.
We are. But our soccer field is technically a true soccer field, and it's not played on the football field. And so we have played the occasional game up there. But just one of those things, our kids do what it takes to get an opportunity to play.
So I guess my thoughts on the volleyball is, you know, at this point, the program's a little bit in flux. We don't have a head coach for it. So it would be good to get the input from the head coach that's coming in. And I guess it would be a little bit premature, in my opinion, to move forward with anything on this until we get input from the coach, and if Charlie has any further feedback, opinions on it as well. So, my thoughts.
Very good.
Okay. All right. Okay. Jason, thanks for
Thank you.
joining us here tonight, and thank you
And if
for.
you guys are faced with questions at any point in time, or parents asking you,
Yep.
you guys know how to get a hold of me. Give me a call up in Phelps. I mean, really, can talk it out.
Very good. Appreciate it.
Always.
All right. Should we move up on an agenda item here?
Sure.
You've got it.
Presentation
You gotta
of
do it
long-range
before-
planning, or,
I do have the one bus.
Rob?
bill.
yeah, letting him sit here and,
That would be-
I don't know if he's enjoying the meeting, or
He's a school board member and a former
he's got
life, or
places
current
to go.
life.
I don't have anywhere to be but here.
Are you okay if we just rattle through it and then,
You have at her.
okay.
I mean, ultimately, I'm gonna be the last thing between you guys and a piece of cake, I think, so.
I think that takes a lot.
We didn't have an agenda prior.
I'm considering it. Where do you have to drive?
I, back to Hudson.
Oh,
Then we-
Get it.
just move it up.
Okay. You're not staying over?
I'm like, where?
One of the problems of our area.
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. The funny thing, do you guys know where, Iota is? So it's south of Rochester by about 20 minutes. I have to be down there tomorrow morning at 8:30.
Oh,
And that's okay, that's
We're
normal.
gonna move 'em
For
up.
me, that's
We're gonna
normal.
move them all.
okay, so,
Well, we shot about 3.5.
yeah, just due to the point where we're at, and time-wise in the meeting, and we still have a couple more agenda items, we're gonna move, the presentation on the long-range facility planning ahead for Rob Brown, so, Rob, did you
floor
wanna
is
start
yours.
us off, Terry, or how would you want to start off?
I
here?
can do it very briefly. You know, we've been talking about looking at long-range planning, long-range facility planning, and I've talked to several different, which I tend to call vendors, the incorrect terminology, but I've only had a few who've really, you know, reached out and been interested in, and Rob has been interested in getting to know our district a little bit better. We talked to him at the school board meeting, the
Convention,
state
yep.
convention, and so he's put this together. I haven't seen it in advance. We've talked about what we've looked for. He's looked at our facilities, and that's why I have another group that would like to talk to us on the 30th. Those are the two that have made the greatest effort
Yep.
to work with our district.
Okay.
And that is why Rob is here.
All right.
So I'll let him take it from there.
You gonna shoot something behind us here?
Yeah, there's,
All right,
I
I
don't
wouldn't mind getting up too.
And we have an HDMI. Ooh, no. So we've got that. Just wait for me to connect to it. Yeah. This, just gonna take it back seat right now, I think.
Perfect. Yeah, have a great evening. We get to see you one more time anyways, right?
Take this off.
Well,
Thank you.
we'll mention it in positive aspects, so. See you, Jason.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks,
Do
Terry.
you have the cords you need?
I think so. That power.
I'm usually packing multiple cords with me, because you never know what might be.
Yeah, I brought all the
be
Mac
the
ones, so
situation.
let's-
Yeah, of course, those are the ones I don't do.
Oh, thank you, I'm gonna see.
Lights. Maybe not. It's coming on. Nobody falls asleep.
No.
Let me scoot over this way. Is there a, we have the backlights on or?
No,
It's just sort of a one
it's
done?
split this way, right, left.
Perfect.
Instead of front back.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to come see you. I mean, as Terry mentioned, you know, she and I met at the WASDA conference. How long ago? Gosh, I mean, it's been a long time. And then, you know, Mike and Stacy and I, you know, had a chance to visit at WASDA. And anyway, this is my third time to your district. First time was to talk to Terry here. Just what is going on in your community? What's important to you? Have you thought about long-term planning? What about your operating levy that's coming up? How do you like to educate your kids? Things along those lines. And then I was able to come back, and Terry was kind enough to spend some time with me going through Sugar Creek? Camp, sorry. Sugar Camp, and also the Three Lakes facility. And, you know, spent some time with John and then Jack over here. Pulled together a lot of great information. And again, thanks to Terry, Jack, and if John were here, I thank you as well. But long and the short, talking a little bit about Nexus Solutions, it's not about Nexus as much as it is about your district. You have a wonderful community going through Three Lakes. You know, oddly, well, it's not odd, it's just, it's different. Typically, when you go through a small community, you can tell it's a smaller community. Three Lakes is very well kept. There's a ton of pride in the community, and you can see that everywhere you look. And similarly with, the Sugar Camp area, which is very, very nice. And you have a wonderful history here as well. And so I wanted to talk a minute about, as far as your goals, and what I've heard from Terry, and talking with Mike and Stacy briefly, your community is by far the most important thing. You have an operating levy coming up, and so you live in, I believe it's 5 years, roughly 3.1 million a year, and that is the lifeblood of your district. And so to maintain that trust over time is keenly important. They must participate in the overall process. Your goals and mission. You've been doing a lot of one-off projects, flooring, for instance, or looking at flexible furniture in certain classrooms, considering this 4K space. So by looking at a variety of one-off projects, is that the best way to leverage taxpayer funds? Is there a better way of looking at, how do we look at comprehensively a series, well, first off, identifying, creating data, which will be returning to information, and then creating a long-term plan, not just a one and done, that would help you work with your community, not only with your operating levy, but a long-term plan on how you want to move forward with educating your kids. And so certainly you could talk to a dozen different professional services firms who have interest in doing architecture, and engineering, and maybe construction management, but their goal ultimately is to help you identify a project and move forward with a project, maybe go to referendum or whatever the case might be. My goal is to build a long-term relationship with Three Lakes, and I hope to this point, Terry will tell you that, I want to stay in touch. I want to understand where you'd like to go. It's important for me to make sure that you're heard, and then what the process is moving forward. When we look at multiple projects all at once, not only are we talking about that long-term plan, but we're looking at taking advantage of economies of scale. And so if we do more things and the public supports it, is there a better financial way of doing it? And there are economies of scale that we can take advantage of in a variety of different areas, whether it's IT, talking about your 4K space, just looking at various infrastructure items throughout your district, and also potentially the school forest that you're looking at, that you already have some of that work underway. And so my goal is to answer your questions tonight and just talk through what that long-range plan looks like. All right, and so who's Nexus? Well, ultimately, we are a professional services firm. We only focus on K-12. That's all we do. Wisconsin, Minnesota, we only work with school districts. We don't do anything else. Personally, I'm just started my 7th year on the Hudson School Board, and frankly, it's interesting to be on this side of the table versus that side of the table. And frankly, the conversations are always similar. I don't care how big the district is or how small. The conversations that the board has are consistent with, as far as how do we make sure that we're taking everybody's opinion into consideration and doing the best we can within the resources, the constraints we have. Partnership approach, at risk. Many times if you work with a different firm, they'll ask you for money up front. They'll say, from a Fund 10 perspective, we may survey, we may do some initial study work or whatever, and we're looking for funds up front. Partnership is important, and to make sure that you're able to put your money where your mouth is, from a Nexus perspective, our goal is to basically fund everything up front and show you, pull a plan together and show you that, in fact, we can deliver on those things that are important. So we're not asking you to set up special budgets or anything else. As it relates to the development of a long-term plan, a 10-year plan, if it were to include demographics or partial study on open enrollment, how do we attract those kids? Why are we not attracting kids from an open enrollment standpoint? If athletics are important to you, what does that look like? Or transportation, as it relates to busing, best routes from a conservation standpoint. And I think I mentioned demographics in general. Long-term facility solutions, looking at everything from the grass tops to the rooftops, your roofing, your civil work, and I've got a bunch of images that I'll be sharing with you in a second. We've done more than $2 billion worth of work within the state of Wisconsin and the state of Minnesota. And I'm hoping to be able to work with you as well. Single source of accountability, this is important. When we talk about single source of accountability, that is from the very first time we start talking, if anything goes poorly, it's on Nexus. It's on me. And so one throat to choke or one back to pat, and oddly enough, I was on Amazon looking at their books, and I'm like, good job, Rob, how cool is that? I'm like, giddy up. So I have to give the Amazon credit for that one. But long and the short is, from the very first time we start talking about concept, as far as what you'd like to accomplish with your school district, how do you want to teach your children, what does that engagement with the community look like, all the way through working with you and the community on potentially a referendum or not. Again, as part of our relationship, I would be more than happy to work with you on your operating levy, and I would not charge you anything for that. And we have significant resources, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Again, it's because it's that relationship, that I'm hoping to build. And the benefit to me selfishly with the operating levy piece is that it gives me an opportunity to learn every corner of your district and the people that are, if you will, power players, and the things that are important to the people of the community, so that when we have success with the operating levy, and if in fact you all decide to move forward with any kind of capital project, you certainly don't have to. But if you were to move forward with a capital project, I've already have built relationships, my team has built relationships within your community that will make the passage of that, the building of trust and answering of questions, basically a halfway done, if you will. Because we have those relationships. People buy from friends, if you will. They make decisions based on the people they trust. They don't want anything to do with strangers. So, as far as our projects, Wisconsin, Minnesota, you see McGregor, one thing, a couple you don't see. You don't see Hibbing, and you don't see International Falls. But we've done vast work with districts. Racine, and we'll talk more about that in a second. That was a $598 million project. Just last April, I helped Plum City, who has a student population half of yours. They went from $300,000 for over 3 years per year. They went in November of 20 asking for, I believe it was $500,000 a year, and got crushed. Went back this last April, and I was able to help with them, work with the community. They asked for $1.1 million because of where they're at per year for 3 years, and we passed it 16%. All right, so program manager at risk, with that single point of accountability, our intent is to help you. Well, first off, you are on point. You are the client. We work for you, and then we are responsible for all of the planning, all of the design, and then ultimately all of the construction. There is no finger pointing. If ultimately, has anybody here been through a construction project? Commercial, or Mike has, Josh you have, Jack has? Daily. Terry's like, yep. And so, not always, but sometimes if there's a disconnect between the drawings and what's been bid, there's this, well, it wasn't in the plans right, or the construction manager or the contractors, they missed they just missed it in their bid. If something happens, ultimately it's on Nexus. So there's not the finger pointing that you're going to have between a construction manager and an architect. And so that alleviates a lot of, frankly, stress on the part of a school district. Our change order rate is less than 1%. Less than 1%. We in Hudson worked with an architect, a typical architect and construction manager, and just our high school project, which was $78 million, typically you'd see about, at a 5%, 5% rate, not 1% rate, but a 5% rate, you'd see about 600 change orders. We had almost 1,400 change orders. And then we got into value engineering at the end, because legally you have to deliver on budget. Not necessarily on time, but you have to deliver on budget, because where are you going to get the extra money? And so we had additional value engineering we had to do, and then we had to basically lower ultimately what we delivered to our public, which was utterly painful. As a school board member, you don't want to, if you make a promise and you work with the community on a referendum and you don't deliver on everything, the public's like, what the heck? And so the pride I have in working with Nexus is our change order rate's less than 1%. Did everybody have a chance to look at that O'Connell Falls book? And I have a, okay, and I have it with me. You know, part of the reason why our change order rate is less than 1% is that we have an army that engineers, varying types of engineers, our construction management team, making sure that constructability is, anything that might be missed is caught. And so by the time we go to bid, our documents capture many of the things that most other firms just simply wait till after we go to bid, after we go to referendum. And so why is that? Well, because we have contingency. Contingency at 5% in a district like yours, you know, a little bit smaller, that contingency, and I don't know, you know, Mike, Terry, Josh, if you guys have seen, but I mean, typically in a district this size, you might see contingency as much as 10%. And if it's 10%, they're suggesting that ultimately you could go back and it's unforeseen. Unforeseen, you don't use contingency as part of the budget. You don't. It's literally for unforeseen conditions, and that's why our change order rate is less than 1%, because we do that study work up front. If you look at that O'Connell Falls book, the level of detail that you'll see, casework plans, window plans, roof plans, you know, walls, IT, just the level of detail that we go to prior to even going to referendum, and as part of a 10-year plan, it's not just the one and done that we're after. You may select to do just a small portion of this overall 10-year plan, but at least you as a board administration, you have identified all of the varying things that you might want to consider at some point, but certainly don't do all of it at once. But then you have a planning tool, and then you can talk to your public. And then at some point, if you have a Fund 46, do we have Fund 46 here? Terry?
We have talked about it. We do have a 46, but we haven't developed it like.
That's all good. You guys started the 5-year? That's cool. But if you, for some reason, have additional dollars, or as part of your operating levy, if you decide when you go back and ask, as an option, you could say, if you're going to ask for the 3.1 again, we're actually going to ask for 3.3. And we're going to tell you because we need to continue to invest and maintain that which the public, the taxpayers, have already paid for. So we're not going to ask for 3.1 again, we're going to ask for 3.3, and then take that $200,000 and earmark it specifically for facilities. And whether you work with me or not, I would suggest you consider that. Ultimately, because your public, they're going to want to know that if you have deferred maintenance, aging infrastructure, what is it that you are doing on behalf of the taxpayer to make sure that, you know, you're not dropping the ball. And so by spelling that out, generally speaking, public support that. They may have questions, but at least you're planning. And then with this 10-year plan that we're talking about, outside of any kind of capital piece we might do up front, you'll be able to plan year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and be able to commit and communicate to your public, which is important. I'm doing a lot of talking, I'm sorry, but I don't want anybody to fall asleep. Any questions on anything I've said so far?
No.
All right, keep going. So let's talk a little bit about Nexus's approach. So my commitment to you is to best work with you on identifying how to best use the space that you already have. I promise I will not put any kind of additions or anything else that's highly expensive unless we've gone through the work of making sure we've maximized how you want to educate your kids in the space that you already have. And frankly, you have a computer room that's empty. Maybe it's not anymore, but it was. It's a beautiful space that you can do a lot of really cool things with. It's that kind of opportunity we would talk about. So the very first thing we see here is a typical school floor, if you will. Here's the library, you see the stacks, the 3 classrooms, office, workroom, so on. The first thing that we would look at is flexible furniture. So really understanding how do your and working with your teachers, how do they want to use their classrooms? You already have some flexible furniture, some teachers that are using furniture. But is there a way to better use to provide more flexibility in your spaces, whether it's at the primary level, the secondary level, it could even be science. To be able to use flexible furniture, which is a cost-effective solution versus knocking down walls and all that other stuff. And so the second piece, we'll talk about based on how you want to educate, team teach, whatever, are there little things that we can do within your existing footprint, within the existing walls and whatever, to better improve flow and so on as far as how you educate your kids. And you see the library, the stacks are gone. We have a little Genius bar so that if you're doing some title work or some tutoring or maybe even some IT, you have an area where the class comes in and you have a small group sit here and work specifically with an instructor or somebody else. You'll see these barn doors between classrooms. And so if you're looking to team teach, or if there's collaboration between, say, first grade, second grade, whatever the case might be, this gives you that flexibility. We've also seen this work at the secondary level as it relates to science. And so science classroom, but then lab in the middle, frankly, becomes a more cost-effective solution, just as an idea. And the last thing, so again, same overall footprint, but the library, we've actually blown this wall out. We've included some glass. We have small group space by turning this overall classroom into 2 small group spaces and a breakout, and then improve the overall flow of the library. You see the openings with this classroom, same here. So again, just looking to be cognizant of how do you want to use your space. Many times when architects go through design and they provide this solution, on paper it looks absolutely fantastic. But if your teachers aren't ready for this 21st century learning space and there's not really a way to grow into it, all of a sudden the space isn't used. And so you spend all this money and you don't really get the benefit from it. This type of discussion gives us an opportunity to provide space with their input that they're actually going to be able to use. So, getting away from design, let's talk a little bit about engineering. What's the difference between these 2 pictures?
Roof penetrations.
Yes, sir. And so, in 2002, this is the Westwood Elementary School in Elk River, Minnesota. There was another architect that started the project, created a budget, went to referendum, and then was fired. We picked up the project. And so originally this was supposed to be a single-story building because everybody knows, elementary age kids, they can't climb stairs. And so what we did is we actually created a 2-story elementary, believe it or not, the first one in the state of Minnesota as far as brand new. A lot of times elementary schools, it's inherited high school or, whatever the case might be. This is the very first brand new 2-story elementary school in the state. And to your point, Mike, from a penetration standpoint, from a design, we went through and managed and really spent the time to create basically one overall toilet exhaust. There's a little intake here. And the reason is that when you have this kind of roof, you lose a significant amount of heat. And by the way, every time you change the roof or you have an issue, the splashing is very, very expensive. On average, it's an additional $800, well, not anymore, it used to be. $800 per opening to flash. And then if you have leaks, you have all these other issues you have to contend with. Our focus in working with you, if we're fortunate enough to re-roof anything, we would talk to you about how do we re-insulate it, and is there a way to combine mechanically some of the openings you have. So it's going to reduce the amount of leakage you have, as well as heat loss. This building with displacement ventilation versus just unit ventilators, the roof the way it looks, the 2-story, this came in $500,000 under budget in 2002. So again, the value of working with Nexus. So the next handful of slides get into some of the conversations Terry and I had as we walked through the facilities with John and Jack. Jack over here, of course. And so mechanically speaking, one of the, I'll let you read most of this, but something that stood out, the elementary uses this existing crawl space, which was converted into a supply duct. And some of the classrooms in that part of the building, and Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, they get cold. They get cold, and frankly, using that crawl space as a air duct, if you will, probably wasn't the best idea. There are ways to improve ultimately that solution. And we have this air intake. I believe that's at the high school. Some of them are just low, and in talking to John, as I recall, sometimes you have snow that's sucked in to the building, and then there's water and other issues. The controls that over here, have they been done over here? Okay. And so we would recommend, even with newer controls, to go through and recommission everything. To actually have recommissioning engineers go through, look at all the mechanical systems, all your electrical systems, and confirm that they're running as per specification. Because more often than not, they don't. Let's see here. So the boiler over here, you have new boilers, but the pumping package is still original. Fair, Jack?
Yeah, that's 3 Lakes.
Yep, I'm sorry. And so long and the short is, we have some older pumps that probably are beyond their useful life. And so when we look at every solution, and this, I'm not suggesting we do this is just some of the study work I've done, whether it becomes part of the plan or not. I just want you to be aware that we've seen this. Our goal ultimately would be to provide good, better, best solutions for everything that we touch. It's not for us to spend your taxpayer dollars. It's for us to provide, collect data, turn that into information, associate that with budgets that's somewhat granular, and have good conversations on, is this where you want to spend your money? What are the pros and cons? And how does this affect you long term? Because you only have so much money that you might be willing to contribute, if you will. Electrical. One of the items here you see on the bottom is this infrared work. Even in areas where we have brand new electrical panels or brand new motor control centers, the connections, if they're loose, over time, if there's, if they've been, hit or whatever, they could be loose and they look great visually, but when you check them with an infrared camera, you can see where there's heat, and that's because it's not a firm connection. And so wherever you see heat, it's a loss of, it creates inefficiency, and we would do that everywhere throughout your facility. Building envelope, especially over at the Three Lakes building, concern we have are the cold drafts and a lack of insulation above the drop tile ceiling. And so if you look, there are certain spots in Three Lakes where if you move the tile, you pop your head up, you can actually see daylight. And so imagine, it might get a little cool up here in the winter if you have basically an open space and the only thing that's keeping you from being cold is maybe a drop tile ceiling or a little bit of insulation. That's a concern. And this is something certainly that we would study throughout both buildings in depth. Same thing with tuck pointing and some of the issues we have with the door openings, just some weather stripping. And frankly, you've done a nice job with what you have taking care of your facilities. But at some point, you have to make decisions on how you spend money. And with this, we're talking about an opportunity to solve many of these problems, or at least identify them. Site civil, one thing that really stood out for me, there's one of the hallways at the high school, if we have a heavy rain, because of how the door is and the slope just outside the door, water runs into the school. We would address all of these site civil issues, at least make you aware of them, and talk about budgets and proactive next steps. Okay. Safety and security. So Jack, there's is it a fire panel here that can you tell us about that? You do a much better job than I do.
The panel there, and we've talked about this in our maintenance meetings, is outdated. And for us to get parts for it, I had to get parts about 2 years ago. And I found a little place down in Florida that actually had a part on their shelf and had it sent up to us so that we could get it back up online again. That one in particular, eventually, and it's in our planning processes, we're going to have to replace.
Yep. And so if one of those parts goes bad again, what happens?
I get on the phone and try finding parts somewhere in the world.
And so, I mean, ultimately, our goal, if we're fortunate enough to work with you, would be to study these systems as well in depth, make you aware of basically their current state, talk about good, better, best solutions, and talk about what you might want to prioritize. Again, because it's not for Nexus to spend your money, it's for us to provide information and educate you, and then have you decide, when is this a priority? And if it is good, better, best the best option? All right, ADA. So just as for instance, I believe this is at the high school. This is basically heavy-duty towel rack or towel bar. And so there's that one corner, I think it's, Terry, right, the oldest part of the middle school? There's just some ADA issues that likely we should talk about addressing. Gymnasium. I was sort of hoping we'd be in the gym tonight. Because there's certainly some opportunities there, and just talking with Jack and Terry, I mean, ultimately the bleachers there, they don't accommodate your typical audience. They're a little bit older, your scoreboards are tired, and ultimately should the gym also be a cafeteria is something that we've talked about. And again, not looking for any kind of agreement or not agreement on should it be or not, but certainly let's have the conversation, talk about pros and cons, talk about what you might like to do if something different, and just see where the conversation goes. All right, so the difference between deferred maintenance, we talk about aging infrastructure, aging systems. Educational adequacy talks about how we might better improve how your teachers teach in their spaces. So here, certainly the school forest is a wonderful opportunity that you already have underway, but if ultimately it does turn to adding an outbuilding or an outdoor classroom or whatever the case may be, there certainly may be opportunities as we're talking about the rest of the site civil work with the other two buildings. From an economies of scale standpoint, do more than if you just tackle it by itself. Here, full-time 4K is not currently available. I will tell you, full-time 4K, I'm sorry? She's like, yes.
We got it now.
Yeah.
It is now.
Yeah. Oh, it is now?
We might not really be ready for the space, but we're doing it anyway.
Good for you, honestly. Well, it shows what happens when I'm not here for a couple months, right?
That's true.
But, as you know, I mean, if you have full-time 4K, they will come and they tend to stay, which is absolutely fantastic. And so this little picture here talks about this little space in this building that might be a nice space, whether it's 4K or splitting the cafeteria from the gymnasium. And Terry, what was that idea you had again?
Well, we were looking at expanding that room to enlarge for the 4K room, but, when we actually went in depth and explored it, just as you had talked about, being a standalone project made it a lot more expensive than if it would have been planned. And the reality of the world we're in right now is we couldn't get contractors, we couldn't get supplies, we couldn't get materials, and we couldn't get contractors or people to do it. So it just kind of helped reshape our thinking, and we decided we're going to make the 4K come to be. It's just going to be with some shape. We're going to share some spaces, and it might be a little bit of creative and flexible room locations at various times, but we've got a plan.
Which, I mean, honestly, I'm tickled that you guys were able to pull that off, honestly, to get it started. Because again, once they're here, you're not going to lose them. And then that should help your open enrollment, I would think. But the neat thing too, and Terry, you touched on a couple of things, not being able to find contractors, it's a small project, in of itself it becomes very expensive. Again, from an economies of scale standpoint, if this becomes part of something much bigger, and not to mention the fact that we do a ton of work in the state of Wisconsin. Oconto Falls is, again, a client that we're working with. Our opportunity to attract contractors and other folks that would have interest in your work is substantial. The number of bid packages that we create to make sure that we minimize markup on markup, again, to put more of each taxpayer dollar into your projects, becomes better and better. And so, here again, the idea of wanting to do it but can't find folks to help, we'd alleviate all that and do it more cost effectively. And so, as far as like Sugar Camp in general, one of the big things here is the safe and secure entry. You know, up here, is that a need? Maybe, maybe not. What do you think, Mike?
Absolutely.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
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 And so
It's just the beginning.
it is for sure. And so when we talk about a safe and secure entry, you know, we also talk about the beyond the entry, once you're in the building, the creation of a bit of a commons, something more where folks can not only celebrate your students and some of the achievements they have, but maybe a congregating space. And there's a variety of ideas. And, you know, again, you know, Terry, Jack, I don't know if you want to share some of the thoughts that you had as we were looking outside, as well as the inside.
Well, I mean, this is talking bigger building project, which is not what this purpose is about. But when we looked at the outside, even the structure on the front of the building, where there's plants and space, you know, where there's some landscaping, there's actually a lot of room potential that could be floor space utilized for instruction and a common space. I am all about safety and security, and I think it can be done to maintain those levels of importance, and it has to be done, and still make your schools feel very welcoming and safe and nurturing, and that is what we can't lose with our community. And the second piece, that just because I don't know if it's in your presentation, Rob, but I kind of beat you over the head with it, is that if you're going to, first of all, I said I won't sign anything and spend our district money, because that's not going to happen. This has to go through the process, and so we've been talking for probably close to, you know, like 8 months, you know, off and on. It's extremely important to me that when we're talking bids and contractors and services, that our local community people who have the ability, the equipment, the know-how, be part of that, that it just doesn't go to the automatic biggest out of Milwaukee, because they can work more in that arena.
Yes.
Because we want to support the people who are supporting us.
Absolutely.
So I'm sorry I had to throw that in there because I didn't hear you say
I'm
that.
glad you did. Well, and so I mentioned the number of bid packages, which ultimately costs us a little bit more because it's more smaller individual packages to manage. You know, but to your point, the benefit of having smaller packages is that you might not have monster contractors up here who can handle a substantial amount of work. But if we break up the packages so that they're small enough where local contractors feel comfortable bidding it, they're not putting too much of themselves at risk. It's important for us as well to make sure that we keep as much of that business local as possible. Certainly. Because frankly, if they know the project opportunities are small enough where they can bid it, they're probably going to help support it. So, and again, when we talk about that common space and all that, we may have the conversation, and at the end of the day, you all might say it's not worth the conversation. You know, we're interested in the safe and secure entry, talk about good, better, best solutions, and then we just leave it at that. All right. Let's see here. So the important part here, we have this computer lab that is currently vacant. Wonderful space opportunity to do something pretty cool with. Same thing with your libraries. Wonderful opportunity to maybe consider doing something a bit different as it relates to the educational space. And then we have this room here, which I believe is back here. Sorry, thank you. To everybody's left. Whoops. That you just have this wonderful space. It's just what can be done different. You know, is there a maker space or a small space? Maker space is essentially a small science, technology, engineering, math space where kids can maybe get a little bit not dirty, but you know, play with the dirt and all that kind of stuff where you're not in a typical classroom, or robotics or things along those lines. So again, without spending any real money, you can take one of these spaces and convert them if you so chose, and the level of conversion would be entirely up to you. All right, career tech ed. Terry and I had an opportunity to speak to one of your, I forget the gentleman's name.
We talked to Nate Gulch.
Yep. And he has lots of really great ideas. His biggest concern, as I recall, is that the space is just tight. And so, is there an opportunity to do something a little bit different and at the same time address fumes? Maybe create a clean lab that's associated with this space, where people, your students, can program 3D printers or plasma cutters or whatever the case is in that CAD space and then actually watch it work. Family and consumer science, I'm assuming, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming this is a fairly popular course here? Yeah?
I think so.
Yep. And so, is there something there that you might want to do different? And the short answer is, you may say, no, we're good with what we've got, but it's certainly another opportunity. And so, I'm going to show you a couple examples of the clean space versus the dirty space. And this doesn't have to be yours, but just to give you a sample of what it is that we've done with other districts. Plum City, I mentioned to you, we're also talking about capital work with them. They have a student population half of yours, and we're looking at creating something very similar to this, where they can program and then look through the glass and see stuff at work. Same thing with DC Everest. Here's the classroom, and then being able to see into the space and see things at work. Also, our CT teachers, line of sight is very important to them. They want to be able to work with kids inside the classroom, but also keep an eye on what's happening in the workshop area, and many times that can't happen. We'll make sure we address that. And so, I believe this is one of the last slides, but let's see here. Special education population. Is special education is its own series, like its own pod, so to speak, series of classrooms, or is it more spread out?
No, we're working really hard to be more integrated, but there are certain rooms that we need to have for kids that have specific needs.
For sure. And so part of this study work would be to identify a common pod. Pairs are really hard to come by. Special ed teachers are really hard to come by. And so if we were to create a centralized pod, we have more of an opportunity to do more with less. And so I think this is the last one. You guys don't have a lot of conference room space. You just meeting space. If you need, parent staff time, you just don't have the space. And this is something else that we work to help you with. Well, okay, I lied. One more. Your auditorium, aging infrastructure. And so we have a theater consultant come through and again provide good, better, best. You don't need to be the Orpheum. It's what would make sense for you. And perhaps the answer is nothing. Okay. Well, I feel like I lied to you again. And there's some other items here that ultimately we would study for you as well. So, facility condition assessment, I am nearly done. But if you guys haven't had a chance to look at that O'Connell Falls, the level of detail that goes into this study book, and we're at risk. We're not asking you for any money up front. We want to be able to show you that we're willing to invest in Three Lakes and be able to provide those options. And if we're fortunate enough that it turns into a project, great. And if it doesn't turn into a project, frankly, then shame on us. But we hope that as part of that 10-year plan, there are some parts that you all believe make sense to go into design and ultimately create a series of projects from. But ultimately, the 10-year plan is yours. And as I promised, we would come back year over year and just check in. Is this still relevant? Are the budgets still accurate? From a planning perspective, how are you communicating this to your public? And that's part of that long-term relationship, and that doesn't cost you anything, other than having to spend time with me, which hopefully is okay. And so deliverables that you likely saw in that O'Connell Falls report, these are a quick list of everything that we would do. Demographics is optional. It just depends on, do you have your arms around your enrollment, your long-term enrollment? And then if you're looking at 4K, from an open enrollment standpoint, where do you anticipate pulling kids from? Potentially stealing kids from? Because it is competitive, as we talked about earlier tonight. This is something that we would be able to do for you. Okay. Every space that you have, based on these, actually there's 21 categories of educational adequacy. By building, we would tell you by type of space, are you at slightly below, which is basically at or below by 5%. If you're under 5% or worse, you get a red. This, not so much from a board perspective, but when we're talking to the public, this really becomes helpful. You know, again, not that we're trying to say, look, we're doing a bad job. The focus on this is educational adequacy, not infrastructure. And so when we talk about how we want to teach our kids and where we're not necessarily up to par, this becomes very helpful. Whoop. All right. Talked a lot about community involvement. We will work with your students, your teachers and staff. We will find, again, if you will, who are the people that are vocal in your community and work with those groups. Do we have like a Legion or a Lions or Knights of Columbus in the area?
All the above.
All the above. And so the idea is, I want to know who those people are. I want to be able to work with them and talk with them and get their inputs on what's important. Same thing from an agriculture standpoint. You know, the gentleman, and by the way, I have to give you guys a huge compliment. That wasn't just fanfare and hey, congratulations. Frankly, for everybody that was here, that was an emotional moment. I mean, and the gentleman that he was just, that's the best thing you could have ever done for him. Honestly, he was tickled. I hope you guys continue to find folks to, you know, ask to be considered in the future. That is by far one of the best and coolest things I've seen. Sorry. But anyway, so as far as these ideation sessions, we want everybody's input, a long-term plan that is that where we have public involvement, student involvement, teacher involvement, is a supported plan. And this is one exercise that we do. I also do with teachers, if money were no object, even though it is, you know, just asking if they could do something different with their space, what would they do? Can somebody tell me what one of the top 2 things is that teachers ask for? Money's no object. What are the top 2 things that teachers ask for? Anybody?
New books.
Okay? No. It's a good guess, though. All right. Principals?
Furniture.
That's a good guess. But
More
no.
space.
I'm gonna say storage.
Yeah. What they ask for is color, and they ask for natural light, generally speaking. Generally speaking. You know, teachers are so practical. I mean, except gym teachers. Gym teachers, I gotta tell you, they're like, I want a field house, you know, 6-station gymnasium. So, staff survey, again, this goes, the Survey Monkey, this goes to every staff person. We can even send it to bus drivers and custodians if you'd like. But this provides good input on how they use the space, what do they think of the space, are they comfortable in the space? And this is just another variable that goes into the overall discussion on how to prioritize opportunities. Public opinion polling, once we get to a point where the board and the administration and the team have prioritized projects, we'll take those projects with budgets and send it to every mailbox in your school district. This is on Nexus. And the idea is, and we'll also ask them, what do you think of the school board? What do you think of the administration? Are they managing taxpayer dollars wisely? Things along those lines. And the reason we ask for that is if there's a blind spot, it's better to know it at the time of the survey than if you go to the public with a referendum. And so with this then, we'll find out, do they want the common space at this building? You know, they may say yes, they may say no. What do they think about safe and secure entry? Other improvements that we'll talk about. And we'll get their opinions back on what do they want to support and not. And then as important, we'll find out their tax tolerance. How much money are they willing to provide on a monthly basis as part of their property tax payment to support the schools making these improvements? And you know, more often than not, as long as we follow the guidance of the survey and we've included the public, passage, generally speaking, happens more often than it doesn't. This is an eye chart, but basically this gets into that 10-year plan. Phase 1, Phase 2, future. In this particular instance, Phase 1 was the referendum that they wanted to go after today, they were telling their public that in 4 years, they were going to go back to referendum again for some additional work, that they were already, as part of their 10-year plan, they were communicating that. And then the future is basically the rest of that 10-year plan. And so when we work together with these planning tools, as we check stuff in and out, this creates what the tax impact will be for the average house in your community. So we together can determine what makes sense and where that property tax threshold is once we get the survey information back. So Racine, that passed by 4 votes. 29,000 votes, passed by 4. Plum City, half your size, again, 1.1 million, after getting, if you will, crushed back in November of 20, asking for $500,000 per year over 3 years. We were able to help them get to 1.1. Then you see these other varying projects. Ultimately, it sometimes takes more than one swing, but just looking at your public, because they're supportive, if they participate in the solution and we communicate to them, there's a good chance that whatever the board selects to move forward with, they may support. Again, we just have to prove to them that it's a worthwhile investment. Change order rate. Owner requested change. Sometimes, more often than not, our bids come in sometimes a little bit better than budget, and then you're able to reinvest those dollars. And so that creates an owner-directed change order, which is a positive thing. Let's see here. You see original contingencies, not 10%, because again, contingency should not be used as part of budget. And you see where the change order rate was for stuff that we truly missed or was unforeseen, which is industry leading. And so my hope is that I'm able to answer any questions you might have and talk about what else you might need from me. And I do appreciate all the time that Terry's given me, that Jack's given me, and that you're giving me tonight. Man, it's warm in here, it's dark.
You want some lights on?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
You guys are like, man, this guy wouldn't stop talking. Ultimately, this is your project. It will always be your plan. I just hope to consult with you.
All right, well, thank you for the presentation there, Rob. And questions, board members, or Terry, or Rob?
Well, I did such a good job putting you guys to sleep. And certainly, it's certainly not a one and done. If you think of anything, please let Terry know. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have. Again, I do appreciate the time.
I guess if nobody's got any questions, I got a couple, Rob. School districts as a whole have been, basically in the news in a negative way with some of the shootings and such like that. And so security is definitely something that comes to a lot of people's minds. Mm-hmm. You addressed one of our concerns here coming in a Sugar Camp. We got the same thing in Three Lakes in the elementary there as well. That's one thing that you can do. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that schools are considering now to, go beyond that in terms of just a secure entrance?
Well, a secure entrance can be a variety of different things. It's just ultimately, whoever comes in, they must go through the office. They have to check in, and then ultimately, once they tell whoever, the receptionist and whoever is behind the desk, where they're going, then they get checked in, away they go. So that can be done very cost effectively. That can be done elaborately. It just depends on what you're looking to accomplish. So as far as safe and secure entry goes, is there something in particular that you're looking for, or what?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that I guess I've seen just doing some brief research, and some of the school districts are taking a little bit more offensive approach instead of just playing defense.
Okay.
So there are some options there, but some of the other defensive options is having some kind of remote control in terms of closure of some hallways and such like that to stop the person from going further than after the threat is identified. So that's one, I guess, that I've seen. And there's some other offensive solutions that some of them are taking down the threat by intense light that basically comes from the walls and ceilings directed at the individual, incapacitating them because they're just, so to speak, blinded. Basically non-lethal, but very effective. But again, I have no idea what costs are and what that is in terms of implementation of that into an infrastructure.
And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, there's a lot of options out there that are actually. I mean, I even saw one where they had a drone that basically was a taser. The sky's the limit in so many of these things. But people are starting to think of providing solutions. So, we're all safe until something happens, right? And none of us here can say it's not going to happen.
Right.
So, again, obviously, how far do you go is one question, but what are some of the things, some of the projects that you've worked with that schools are starting to maybe either initiate the discussion or have already implemented some of these?
Yeah, and so great question. And frankly, for the last 10 years, people have been talking about active shooter. Have you guys gone through Alice training? Mm-hmm. And so there's a variety of different things, but as far as varying levels of, how much money do you want to spend and ultimately what's the benefit? We've worked with districts on the panic buttons, and so there's a specific button for an active shooter where if you hit it, you have the receptionist, this active shooter comes crashing into the building, there's this panic button, and it actually drops doors. There's a little sensor, so if there's a person there, it won't drop until it's clear, because you don't want these big steel doors dropping on people. But they're bullet resistant, and so there are those options. Mm-hmm. That, from a design standpoint, becomes I wouldn't say challenging. You want to make sure that you don't block any egress that might be necessary for people to escape the building, or if there's a fire at the same time, where an active shooter starts a fire somewhere, hoping the students come crashing towards them. We want to make sure that we provide different levels of egress. The other thing that we've done that's actually pretty cost effective is like in cafeterias where they've got the big sheets of glass where anybody from the outside can see in. We create the, like in the case of your district, we'd have your logo on one side so people from the outside would see your school logo, but people being on the inside of the cafeteria can see out. It's almost like the glass has been tinted. And so it makes it difficult for an active shooter to target anybody because they can't really see anything. And that's actually very cost effective. And at the same time, it highlights the mascot and school pride and things along those lines. Mm-hmm. I've not heard about the light thing though, honestly, but we certainly could research it. And as I talk about good, better, best, we can talk about, here's something that's going to, cost you $5 million. It's absolutely fantastic. Shoots them with little darts and puts them out, and I'm exaggerating, of course. But something really super elaborate, and then dial it all the way back to, something that may make basic sense for your district, and you guys can decide how much money do you want to invest in that type of thing. So, okay. Does that help?
Yeah, I think it definitely warrants part of the discussion in terms of, this is a long-range facility upgrade that we're looking to do and plan, and I think that definitely should be a big focus and part of what we do.
And we could also stage it, if you will, as part of this 10-year plan. We could have step one, this is the investment, and maybe we're asking the public for that kind of support, and get that basic first part done and then be able to build upon it so it's not all, you're not taking that hit all at once. And again, getting back to your operating levy, let's just say hypothetically, you say we're going to add $200,000 that's dedicated to just facilities. And then we go to referendum and we take care of that first step. You have that $200,000 that you can bank or bond against, and then do that step 2 in a couple of years, if you so choose. My point is that you have options on when you want to do stuff, if you want to build upon projects versus doing it all at once, and we would work with you on that.
Okay. All right.
Man, that was a lot of words, I'm sorry. Josh is like, are we done?
He is not.
Taking
Nope.
it in.
He takes it all in, believe me.
All right, any others? Terry, you good?
Terry's got questions, I know you do.
Big questions.
Anybody else? No, we're good. Terry,
Other than saying the change order numbers are impressive.
It's
From
all
an
that-
industry that abuses it, that's impressive.
Well, I mean, again, whoever you talk to, that change order rate, and as important, the contingency dollars that they typically allocate to a project, we'll see, and then ask them about how much time and investment do they put in investing in your district prior to signing a contract, prior to going to referendum, because that, I think, will tell you a lot. And we, again, work at risk. You know, if we're not successful together, then it's on us.
I have a background in Navy procurement and investment, and what a shabby outfit that is. You know, everybody makes the absolute low bid because you don't make any money on the bid. You're gonna lose money on that. But boy, that change 1, and change 2, and change 997. That's where the money all is.
Absolutely. And so I told you about Hudson's High School. So at the end, when you get into, man, we have to stay on budget, and you're doing this value engineering where you've already bid and you've got dollars, when you give that back, you're only getting like 70, 75 cents on the dollar. But then you have to take those dollars now that you all of a sudden have and then pay for additional stuff. And because it's a change order, you're not getting it on bid date dollars. You're getting it at a 20% premium, 30% premium. So the net effect on that is like, you get 50 cents on the dollar of benefit. It's like, why would you do that? We also, now that I'm thinking about it, if there's something that you guys are interested in, but we're not sure we have the budget, we do a lot of voluntary ads and deducts on bid day. And so then if you decide to, like, we have extra money because bids came in better, we have this list of stuff we've already bid that we know that you have interest in. You have those premium bids where we could take advantage of that versus asking for it after the fact. Again, it takes extra work, but we're maximizing the taxpayer dollar. So.
All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for your information, and safe journeys home.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for letting me jump ahead.
Yeah. All right, very good. So next we go to G. Back up to G. We're going to go to school forest / highway A property update report. Could be the last time we call it that, right?
Could be. Could be.
Yeah.
Quick update since we last talked, which doesn't seem like all that long ago.
It wasn't.
No. There has been nothing from Phil, but of course we all heard that Phil said he would have his salaries out there hopefully within a month. We're not to that point yet, so nothing on that front. I know, unless Terry, you had anything.
I have not, no.
Okay. Yesterday morning, had the privilege of having a cup of coffee with Mr. Grossman at the shack out there. I highly recommend it if you're ever invited. Really good coffee. But he introduced me to a silviculturist. I believe I'm saying it right. Is that right, science guy? Silviculturist?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tree guy. No, silviculturist.
That's correct.
From the U.S. Forest Service. Very experienced gentleman. You may know him, Terry. Oh shoot, Terry Strong. At any rate, John wanted me to meet him because John sees him as someone who will. John's very open about, hey, I'm done with running things in my world right now. I don't need to run anything. This guy will help you. And in the world of forest plan management, tree education, anything that has to do with the trees out there in our parcel, and how that relates to teachers and kids. And so it was a good connection. And we then took some time and fed the mosquitoes out on the property a little bit and got 3 of the learning stations plotted on the mapping software so that we can begin to connect those dots hopefully later this month. Got a second installment of the same map plotting with John and neighbor Jeff Smith scheduled for next week, Tuesday morning. So that's the update on that. And we spent some time as a cabinet team to come up with the 5 names that are next on the agenda.
All right, great. Thanks for the update on that, Justin. And let's move to, well, did anybody have any questions for Justin? All right. Okay, so next we'll go to consider name for the school forest / highway A parcel.
So what, there, I think you have.
I did put it in your packet, but I made a few hard copies if anybody wanted to see the rationale. I'm sure.
What you see there is the product. The options in front of you are boiled down from
36.
37 total submissions for ideas. Per our last discussion at the board level, you asked us for 5, and you got 5 in front of you, along with some of them have longer narratives than others. That was what was submitted as far as the rationale for why that idea was proposed to us. So there they are.
Okay.
A couple of thoughts that and there are others here that were on the same table, so please add in if you wish. But the one that's listed first rang a lot of bells in terms of the way it kind of rolls off the tongue with the Camp 3. Some significance there in a couple different veins. Also, for the Three Lakes alumni in the room, the science teacher, Verdon Cecil, was, if we want to go the route of a name, obviously that I think that one got 3 different of the 37, 3 different idea submissions with his name included. So if you want to go the route of naming it after someone, there would be someone that we, of course, and we've had no contact with this person at all. Sure. So that would be something we would need to do with that fellow was chosen.
By the
way. But those are just a couple thoughts. Anything else? Go ahead.
Sure, I can add. So the other part of the conversation that we had was some of those names could be infused in certain specific parts of the forest. So like the narrow gauge trail might be our trail system.
Or like the nest, shall
yes,
we say.
The nest.
Could be a building.
Yes. Yes.
That's right. The tree.
The tree house.
Yeah.
I think we should read the names out loud because in
Yes.
case people are watching the video. And so Camp 3 School Forest, that was the combination of Sugar Camp and Three Lakes. There's a Camp 2 road east of the property, and of course we know that Sugar Camp Elementary is located here on Camp 4 road. So Camp 3 brought the 2 names together and was like another, kind of falls in a nice pattern. We liked that when we were talking it through. Verdon Cecil Outdoor Classroom, again, we had a lot of discussion about we would have to talk to Mr. Cecil and, make sure that he would be on board with it. But there's just lots of very positive conversation that comes up around him. People remember lots of lessons. And in fact, I've been told by a few different people that went into education or something in environmental ed or a job thereof because of their learning with Mr. Cecil. Okay. And then you can take it over from there. Thunder Pass.
I don't have the list.
Oh, you don't? Okay, so I'll just keep going. Thunder Pass was a proximity to Thunder Lake. The Nest, it's a place where the blue jays and the robins learn and grow, kind of like our baby birds coming together and growing into the big blue jay birds. I don't know, I'm kind of embellishing, but the Nest, I think of the little ones and growing. But the Nest was pretty popular. That was supported in a few different formats and discussions. And then the Sugar Lake School Forest, Lake merges Sugar Camp and Three Lakes into one unified name and community. At Sugar Lake Forest, the two communities come together to learn, explore, and thrive through educational and recreational activities. So those are your 5 names that we narrowed it down to.
All right. So, we've all heard the explanation and I guess the information behind each of the names, and we could do something as simple as a vote or something. I mean, you listed these in priority. The Camp 3 School Forest was your top choice administratively, right?
I think it was.
Consensus was that one was
Okay.
was the first one.
So it could be as simple as someone making the motion for that, or it could be one of the other ones, but that might be a little bit muddy, I guess, if we pick something further down. I guess if that's not a priority administrative wise. But we could do ballot and just each person votes once, or make a motion for the top recommendation.
I like the ballot.
Okay, let's do it.
Sort of tell us all where we're at.
Well, there's 5 of them here, right? So,
I just get one apiece. Oh, no. I make a motion, it's one apiece, Mr. Whale decides. And I got a quarter.
So is the results of this what we're going with, or I mean, is there
is there room for others?
Well, I'm not saying. I mean, I like the 5.
Okay.
I just didn't know if there was any benefit to short discussion as far as any thoughts. I guess one way or another.
Can I add a little thought in here? I'm just going to, because I already said it. I think logos too, because like the next thing you'd want is like signages, logos, you know, how that works. I have a preference.
Is it the Nest by chance?
Yeah, I do love, that one's awesome, but Camp 3, I'm like envisioning, you know, the big 3, and you know, that'd be easy to do if you really.
Okay, so you like the top one?
I do.
Okay,
That's my
all right, we got it out of you.
Yeah, there you go. Struggle.
So from a marketing point of view, there's another
I
vote.
think there's value to having something short and memorable and easy to,
Yeah.
getting that memory thing out there is easy. When you name for a person, that's easy too, so that one has some value to it. Sometimes when you get too many words or too many whatever in there, it gets to be lengthy and you can overthink something. So I think there is value to brevity sometimes in these naming processes.
Yeah, that has a disadvantage though, is if we'd ever want to come along 25 years from now and sell naming rights, you can't hardly name a name. And whereas these all 4 of them you could modify easily, but you couldn't modify that one.
Which one?
Word and Cecil.
Oh, right.
Verdun Cecil Outdoor Classroom. And once it's named, it's named.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, people definitely, there are some that have an attachment and an experience with Verdun, and many others that do not, and so it's the connection isn't there. So, you know.
Did the person that did Thunder know the history of why Thunder Lake is called Thunder Lake? Because of the Thunder Lake narrow gauge, the logging camp that was
I
through
think
there.
that was in there, wasn't it?
There's
Yeah,
still
it's
bed
in
springs
there.
back
We
there
talked about that
from the
in-
camp.
No, I think the rationale for that one was just simply because of the proximity of Thunder Lake.
Close to Thunder Lake, right.
Okay.
So I think we need to clarify what you're voting on.
I was just curious. I was just curious if this was giving our top vote, and then.
Or are
if
you
this is
wanting more
the winner.
discussion after you
Yeah.
come up with the top names? Do you want more?
Well, since you opened it up to the community for names, why don't you put the top 5 in a poll and have the community vote, or send it out in an email and have a vote, and then whoever gets the most votes wins? Just an idea.
this was given to the community initially, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so these are community submitted
Mm-hmm.
ideas right now. I mean, I guess it's up to if the board, that's a decision, a discussion point.
There-
That is a possible solution, that's a discussion point.
Is there any reflection of the amount, or did you have 37 different entries?
That's entries,
So each totally unique
Mhm.
upon itself?
different people, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Are you comfortable voting here, or do you want to? We're ready to go.
There's two of them done.
I would like to say that, I mean, I think that, like was said, so many of these, really any one of there's a couple that just fall out better as an overall name, but very much the rest I see as using them as pieces, parts and pieces in here too, without a doubt.
For sure.
So I don't think we need to, I don't think we can say any one of these doesn't get used in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is
Yeah.
my 2 cents on this whole thing.
Yeah. So are we comfortable voting here? Michelle, you're okay?
I'm not voting.
You're not voting?
I'm not voting, no.
Okay. All right. Terry, you're comfortable? Okay. All right, let's do it.
Pass them down, do it down here.
One for Camp 3, 2 for Camp 3, Camp 3 School Forest, and the Nest. 3 Camp 3 and 1 Nest,
There we go.
and 1 abstained.
Okay. We have a winner. There we go. We got a name. How's
Now
that?
you can go to sleep with that now.
Just happened to happen.
I
Should we tell you whose that was? You wanna know?
Sure.
Is that person, that was Ben Neindorf?
Yeah.
Ben Neindorf?
Oh,
Who is it?
Ben Neindorf?
nice.
he graduated in 1999. He's a year older than me.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's actually, that one was a community.
Yep, he's
Two
from,
kids-
he lives in
two
Sure
kids
Camp,
go
2
to
kids in
school
Sure
here.
Camp.
Yeah, another
Excellent.
one, baby.
Well, I think a lot of people can look at that name and feel good about, no matter if you're from, what part of the
It's inclusive.
communities that are on both sides of the forest. Kind of takes the, I guess, a similar stance that the Three Eagle Trail did, where they pulled Three Lakes and Eagle River together, and so both of them had a big part in it. And not to say that other of our communities within the district are, we could have gone on and called it, the Peel, Stella, Hiles, but I'm sure, from a marketer's point of view, keeping it short and sweet there's a lot to say about that, and so we definitely appreciate all the input. Thank you for pulling us all together and giving us your 5 best recommendations, and I'm excited. We have a name. Oh, good deal. Very good.
Underpass was a tough one to pass up, but I kind of had a soft spot for that one. But I see that as, I think, a better use. Like I said, I just see such a good use for all of these as pieces together.
They all kind of lend themselves to
Yeah.
pieces,
Right.
parts
Yeah.
of
I
the
think
facility eventually.
It's really awesome, like the thought that the community is putting in and we're all putting into it because there's intent to it, and it's gonna feel we're gonna own it, this isn't just the green trail or the blue trail, they'll have like history and elements that reflect us as a district, so. Love it.
Nice.
Good deal. All right, moving on. Going to district-related positive happenings.
School's out.
We had activities day, last day of school, and we had, I think, 25 to 35 volunteers from SCO and community members, so
Nice.
there had to be at least 3 people for every, or 3 kids for 1 adult, which was awesome.
Yeah,
Made the end of the year really nice.
good.
I'm not gonna steal any of Charlie's thunder, because I know he's gonna have a full spring sports recap for you. But obviously, especially culminating in the state track, they had a really good showing from Three Lakes again, state champion. Number of podium accomplishments down there in lacrosse. So, like I said, I'm not gonna go into full detail. We'll let Charlie do that gig when he gets back. For those of you not at graduation, I do need to highlight the fact that 74% of our senior class reached or attained the level of President's Academic Excellence Award, either silver or gold rating. That's unheard of, 74%. There's schools in the state of Wisconsin that have that for a graduation rate, folks. I mean, that's not what we're shooting for. But what I'm saying is, really, one last time to celebrate our senior class leaving. A lot of really talented kids in a lot of special ways, for real. Going far beyond academics, just a really solid, I don't know what was in the water, but a really solid group of kids right there. So, congratulations to all of us for having part in that. 74% qualifying for the President's Academic Excellence Award, I've never heard of that.
And to your point, that's not a bar that we set.
No.
That's a national
Correct,
bar.
Correct,
Yeah.
That's
how we
so
compete.
You get a letter from the President of the United States. Here's your criteria, and here's who you give it to. So that's pretty cool.
Very good. Ready to move on? Okay. All right, and WASB correspondence.
I did send out to you the letter from WASB where they formally have moved, and Captain, you can speak to this too. They have moved to withdraw from the NSBA, the National School Board Association, for the 2022-23 school year. In the letter, they highlighted, the reasons why. They're also looking forward to new leadership taking over. But at this point in time, at this next year, the relationship will not be that we are part of NSBA. And then I had a follow-up communication today from our school alliance lobbyist, and they just reiterated that it was hard for a lot of the school boards and districts in the state to get past the comments that were made in regards to earlier this year when parents were pitted against school boards that felt like for their stance and the message. And in one letter, it did actually state again that the parents were reported as looking at domestic terrorism, which is not what WASB had supported. It was not, it was very random and out of context. You can see the damage that it caused to a lot of school boards, communities, the state feelings with the affiliation, and just felt it was a good time to stop and readjust. So that's where we're at. I like that we as a board, you as a board, and I put we in there because we've tried to stay impartial when we're talking about political situations. But I think when you look at this situation, what was coming forward from the national organization at this point in time, looking back, was not probably where we as a board or our constituents would fall with viewpoints. We would want their input before supporting that stand. So I feel that the WASB took it very seriously. That's why they took their time and were in fact the last state to make their decision, with a lot of deep conscious thought, and I think also a lot of legal advice and weighing it all out. And I just think our local organization continues to show what a strong force they are and advocate for our districts.
Yeah. Nebraska just pulled out too.
Did they?
Mm-hmm. Terry?
Yeah, it was a difficult decision. There's a lot that's gone under the bridge. A lot of water's gone under the bridge here. And there's a lot of hangover of feelings that go back many, many years. And what happened with the letter was just sort of what pushed it over the edge. And I think everybody took it seriously, and I think it's John Ashley in particular took it seriously. And he sort of maneuvered the thing into the situation where we're still in the middle because you belong to whoever you give your funding to. And we had funding due recently to the NSBA, and the vote had to be taken before that. So we did not fund the NSBA. We still have the money, but we'll probably fund the other group, the other side of the thing. So, and then we'll do it all over again next year and see if there's been any big improvements by NSBA, and if there have, we could well come out with something different.
All right, very good. And anything else on that from anybody? No? Okay. All right, next we move to executive session, adjourning to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statutes 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider individual staff contracts, hiring and or resignation / retiring of staff. Take a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion by Terry, second by Josh. I'll take a roll call vote, starting with Stacy.
Aye.
Josh?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
Mike? Aye. All right, motion passes 5-0. Everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. And yeah, if you can make it in July, we'll love to see you. So.